On this episode of The Powers Project.
Recently, these different sheriffs have blamed the police unions and saying, well, we try to get rid of bad officers, and the police unions come in, they're so strong, and and they rehire them or give them back their jobs after, we want to fire them. And so you're saying that these sheriffs agree to this so that they're able to do that.
Yes. And that's what's so
Wow.
ridiculous about them trying to blame it on the unions, because that contract has two signatures on it, the union signature and the sheriff's signature. And if the sheriff didn't agree with something that was in there, he shouldn't have signed that contract. So here he has this horrible inability to terminate bad officers, and he turns around and he tries to blame it on the unions, but he's the one that signed the damn contract.
James, it's a pleasure to finally meet you. How are you doing today?
I'm pretty good, Kurt. How you doing?
I'm doing great. For the listeners and viewers out there, I want to. How about you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and uh, what you're doing now.
Oh, well, basically, I am a non-law enforcement officer running for sheriff of Pinellas County, Florida, to enact the changes in the reforms that the police industry itself are unwilling to do. And I've been investigating police corruption here in Pinellas County for over 10 years. The amount of corruption that we have here is massive, and I don't think that it's just us here in Pinellas County that have this problem. I think this exists all over the entire country. And I'm trying to bring a new way of reform to this by having non-LEOs, non-law enforcement officers, take over the sheriff's departments by running for sheriff and being elected to do so.
And I completely agree with you. I think that's the only way that we change the system from within. What would you say though to people who go, well, you don't have any experience in law enforcement, so what qualifies you to become, you know, sheriff? What or
Well,
the head of
I've
any
been asked that
police
question a
department?
lot, and there's really two separate answers to that question. The first one is that the constitutional position of sheriff that's created in the state constitutions of every state really is an elected official management position. That's all it is. It's a management position, just like the constitutionally created clerk of the court or the tax collector or even like a mayor of a city. And when we elect a mayor, we don't require that a mayor go to mayor academy, and we don't require that he be a mayor for 20 years before we elect him. But yet the mayor is the one who is actually in charge of the police industry in his particular city. The sheriffs are the only ones that are actually elected. It's like saying that Trump has no military experience, but this entire country elected him to be the president, and he's in charge of the Air Force, the Marines, the Navy, and the Army, and he has not spent a single day in the military service. The issue really is that you hire somebody who has the ability to put forth a program or policy changes or things that you want to have as your sheriff, and that person has a right to run for sheriff, and you have a right to vote for him to bring these programs in, to bring these reforms in, just like you have a right to bring in a new mayor when you don't like the way the city's run.
I completely, I completely agree. So, um,
Well,
what?
the
Oh,
other
go
end
ahead.
of
Yeah.
that is that it's a two-part answer. The other end of that is what we have currently and what we've had going on for the last 100 years is what I call chain of command inbreeding. And what that means is we, the voters, have been fooled. We've been lied to, thinking that we actually are voting for a sheriff in any county when really we're not. Those sheriffs are groomed for 20 or 30 years, handpicked by the police industry, funneled into office. Most of the time, they do something, a little quick little thing where the old sheriff will retire a year before his 4-year term, and then he'll have his best friend appointed for the sheriff, and that sheriff's in place for the year before the election, which gives them a huge advantage in name recognition to the public, and they wind up getting elected. So most states, most counties, we don't ever elect an actual sheriff. They're just pretending to allow us to elect the sheriff that we chose. And those guys that are indoctrinated into the police industry for the last 20 or 30 years, they're not going to change anything. And that's why they were put there. And that's why we don't get the reforms and the change that we asked for.
Very true. That's the way it works politically throughout, regardless of who you're voting for, pretty much. Um, One of the things is obviously that you would have going against you is that you're going to have the police. Oh boy, I don't know why I've lost my train of thought today, but the um, the police unions. There you go. you're going to have the police unions obviously against you and speaking up against you because you're not part of the system, and they certainly don't want you in their system, and they're not going to support you. How do you overcome that kind of negativity? Because again, you're reaching out to folks who don't understand how the system truly works, and you're fighting against a system that's been in place, like you said, for 100 plus years. And and educating people to go, look, this is how the system really works. How do you overcome something of that magnitude where you have like police unions who would come out completely against you?
Well, that's again a multi-part answer. First off, the police industry itself, meaning the police officers and the people that work within it, and the police unions and their members, which are the same police officers, really don't represent that much of any given community. Here in Pinellas County, if you took every single one of the police officers, all the different agencies that are operating within Pinellas County, the Pinellas County Sheriff's Department, they represent literally less than 4% of the total population. So it's really ridiculous that we have to sit here and concern ourselves and allow that 4% of the population to control what the other 96% of the population gets. We're letting the flea on the dog wag the dog instead of just the tail wag the dog. And really, the people should just stand up and say, look, we don't really care what the 4% thinks. This is the way we want things done in our community. And that's what I bring to the table. That's what nobody from within the police industry brings to the table, is that accountability for the citizen. What do the citizens want in their policing? And right now, all you're getting is what the police want in the policing. And they don't give a damn about what the citizens think. And as far as the unions go, I don't care about the unions. I look at the union contracts that we have here. And our current sheriff, Robert Galtieri, he signed a union contract that agrees that if he terminates an officer, that the union gets to arbitrate whether or not that officer should have been fired or not. Now, I can kind of see that. That's not a really horrible thing to have in there. But what Sheriff Galtieri signed is he signed a union agreement that allows the union to pick the arbitrator, to pick the judge. And that's what's in all these union contracts all across the country. And I think these sheriffs lie to the people and say, oh, the union was really pushing me and forcing me to do this, so I had to do this. Well, police are not allowed to picket. They're not allowed to not come to work. They can do blue flu and all that kind of nonsense, which I think makes them look childish. But the bottom line is the sheriffs that sign these ridiculous agreements with the unions, they know what they're signing, and they're also protected underneath it as well. So it's really a situation where the fox is watching the hen house there, and he's trying to pretend, all these sheriffs are trying to pretend that I had to sign these union contracts when they don't. I won't be signing any union contracts that give away the power to clean up the police industry.
That's interesting. I never heard that before, because I know, recently the different sheriffs have blamed the police unions and saying, well, we try to get rid of bad officers, and the police unions come in, they're so strong, and and they rehire them or give them back their jobs after, we want to fire them. And so you're saying that these sheriffs agree to this so that they're able to do that.
Yes. And that's what's so ridiculous about them trying to blame it on the unions, because that contract has two signatures on it, the union signature and the sheriff's signature. And if the sheriff didn't agree with something that was in there, he shouldn't have signed that contract. So here he has this horrible inability to terminate bad officers, and he turns around and he tries to blame it on the unions, but he's the one that signed the damn contract.
Would a sheriff come to you and go, well, I don't have the negotiating power that you think I have? Would he be able to use that as an excuse, or does he really have the ability to negotiate these contracts and go, no, I'm not going to sign this? Does he?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Of course he has the ability to not put his signature on something that's harmful to the people in his community. But he doesn't, because he is part of the problem. They're all working together. They all want these reciprocal protections for each other. And he's worried about, if he signs something that doesn't provide all these protections, that his officers won't listen to him. Well, that's a little ridiculous. That's like letting the kids in the classroom run the classroom and run the school. You can't do that. If they're bad officers, they need to be removed. They need to be taken out. And if I'm sheriff and I'm presented with one of these ridiculous union contracts, I'm going to have a great big red marker, and I'm going to mark through all the other things that I'm not wanting in there and hand it back to them. And if they don't want to agree to that, then the hell with them. No union contract.
And so with no union contract, where would that go from there? Because like you said, police can't picket, correct?
No, they're not allowed to go off on strike. They're not allowed to strike. Correct.
So what would be their what would be their alternative to if you don't sign a contract with the police union? What alternatives do they have?
Well, they try and hold that over you by threatening blue flu, which is basically a group of officers that are going to lie and pretend that they're sick and not come to work and do their jobs. And if I have a situation where I've got a lot of blue flu officers, those are the ones that I'm going to start looking at terminating.
Okay.
Why do we need
Right.
police officers on our force that are going to lie about being sick and not come and do their job because they want to throw a little temper tantrum that they're not going to get to be fired when they do something wrong? We don't need those officers. We have too many of them already.
Well, what that does is that shows this pattern that if police officers are willing to lie about being sick just so they can get their way, that also shows that they're willing to lie in other incidences as well, especially when they have people pulled over and things may not be going the way they want. And we've seen them time after time after time create these lies to and put them in their reports to make a scene seem worse than what it was or completely different than what it was. And this happened to you when you
All the time.
so you went to the first video I saw of yours. First off, let's talk about your YouTube channel because that's how I found you. And what's the name of your YouTube channel?
On YouTube, I'm McLynas for Sheriff or James McLynas for Sheriff. It'll come up either way.
Okay.
And it's McLynas.
Okay.
And the video that you're talking about was probably from about 6 months ago, 5 or 6 months ago.
Okay. So basically, you went in to view a video. Is that right? And
I went to the courthouse to use my Florida constitutionally protected Title 10, Chapter 119 open records request right to view, watch, and make my own copy of a court hearing video. The state attorney, Pam Bondi, specifically says that I have the right to view those without having to pay them. The clerk refused to let me look at the video unless I paid a $25 fee. I very clearly explained very calmly that that's not the law, that's not the way things work. And she just said, well, I'm done with you. And she slams the window in my face and walks away. And the next thing she did was call the police on me because I was requesting the public records request. The next thing that happened is 6 Pinellas County Sheriff Department deputies come bum rushing in, start screaming and barking orders at me, and go through a series of machinations where they attempt to figure out different ways to arrest me. And they basically brought up 5 different ways to try and arrest me that day, even though I had violated no law at all. In fact, one of them actually grabbed my hand and tried to put handcuffs on my one hand for trespassing when I'd never even been asked to leave yet. And this is what happens. The government protects the bad actors. The police protect the bad actors. The police protect the bad police. And that's what's wrong with our government. The government itself has gotten too big, too powerful, too predatory on the people. And the government and the mindset of the government workers is that they think that we work to serve them, not the other way around. And that's what's wrong with our country. That's what's wrong with our states. That's what's wrong with our counties and cities.
Well, I want to talk about that, but before I go off onto that little tangent, I want to talk about the fact that the police officer who filed the police report lied in his report. Now,
Yes.
one of the things I talked about before the show started is that judges, prosecutors, and cops have this immunity. They can do things and get away with it. If you and I if we filed a false police report, we would be arrested for that.
Correct.
Okay, and yet cops can do it at will, and there's no consequence to that action.
Correct.
And I just go, where, what society where you have rules where you go, you know what, you can do whatever you want and there's no consequences to it. What do you think would happen in a society like that? And that's exactly what happens in these police departments when these cops have no consequences for violating your rights, for lying about you, for having you falsely arrested. There's no consequences. They don't care because they know they're not going to pay for it. They know you're going to pay for it. If they had arrested you that day, you're the one who would have to go through the system. You're the one who's going to be inconvenienced. You're the one who's going to be out of money. You're the one who's going to have to deal with this. Even if you're right, it's no sweat off their back. They're going home to have dinner. They don't care. And it's that cavalier attitude that allows them to run roughshod over everybody, and because there are no consequences to their actions. So
they actually have a saying for that. The cops have a saying for that. They call it, you may beat the rap, but you won't beat the ride. Meaning
Right.
you may not get convicted, but you're going to go through all the shit we're about to put you through. Pardon my French. but,
Oh, gotcha.
but and that's what they do, and they do it intentionally. And a lot of these officers use it as a weapon against anyone who they think offended them or didn't bow down and kiss the ring enough, or what we call contempt of cop. And it's my opinion that about 80% of the police reports that are filed have some level of intentional misrepresentation or omission. And usually that omission, misrepresentation, is to falsely criminalize somebody or to get them out of trouble for something that they've done. And it's a massive problem. In a lot of states, we have a situation where you're required, in fact, all states, you're required to do what's known as a Brady list. Are you familiar with that?
I've heard of it. I'm not as familiar. I'm not familiar with it right up there. Once you start saying, I'll probably go, oh yeah. But right now, I know I've heard of it, but I'm not aware of what you're talking about.
Well, what a Brady list is if I'm being criminalized and I'm being accused of crimes, I have the right to any evidence whatsoever that may exonerate me. And one of the things that may exonerate me is whether or not the officer that they allow to sit in a uniform, which I disagree with. I don't think any officer should be allowed to sit on the stand dressed in a uniform and testify. They should be in civilian clothes at all times. The badge shouldn't testify, the person should. And so if you have this officer in his uniform on the stand, whatever he says is going to be believed. And the problem with that is a lot of these officers are not credible. A lot of these officers have been caught lying. A lot of these officers have falsified reports. A lot of these officers have actually gotten in trouble for that. And what's supposed to happen is I'm supposed to be able to automatically get that information if this particular officer has already been proven to be a liar, because that's information that I could use to exonerate myself from the things he's accusing me of. And the Brady law requires that the district attorney, the state attorney, and the police industry keep a list of these bad players and these bad, unreputable officers who have been known to lie, and automatically give that to me if this officer is testifying against me. Now, typically what happens is state attorneys will have a copy of the Brady list too. And if they see a case coming up and they see this is the officer that's going to testify, a lot of times they're unwilling to even prosecute the cases, which it should be. If the officer is a known liar, why should he continue to get to lie against more people? But the problem here, in Pinellas County, is the sheriff's office refuses to create the Brady list. The state attorney's office refuses to ask the sheriff for the Brady list. So they just let every single one of these lying deputies come forth and testify against everyone here in Pinellas County and criminalize them. And the Pinellas County deputies that are a part of this, they literally brag about they are the baddest gang in Pinellas County and nobody can stop us. And that's where they get that from, because they're being protected by their boss, the sheriff. They're being protected by the state attorney. They're being protected by the individual judges that they come before, that who also know that they're lying, hear them lie, get proven in court that that deputy lied multiple times, and they never do anything about it. And that's why we have the mass incarceration problems that we have now. I would say that at least 20, 25% of the people that are in jail right now did not do the crimes that they're being accused of.
Well, there's a lot of statistics out there that prove you're right. And, in fact, there's a statistic that that the tactics that the police use, these coercion tactics, these psychological coercive tactics that they use against people to get them to even to falsely admit to a crime they did not commit because of how they interview these people or interrogate these people is probably a better word. That there's a large amount of people who end up, just to get the cops off their back, will say whatever because the cops are just relentless. And one of the things that one of the videos I saw, which is similar to what I'm talking about, is this 17-year-old kid that you showed a video of, that he was pulled over, and this cop put him through a litany of these tests, these sobriety tests, and he passed each one with flying colors. I mean, I couldn't even imagine. I mean, seriously, I've never seen any cop give that many tests and that were that detailed. And this kid passed it, and he still arrested this kid because it was as if he had to show, well, you're going to jail anyway because I'm still right, even though I can't prove I'm right. I know I'm right, sort of thing. And
well, that's not the reason I think that he arrested him. I think that the reason he arrested him, that was a Pinellas County Sheriff deputy, and the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office has a set illegal quota system here. And if that deputy doesn't write enough citations, make enough arrests, or do enough what they call FIRs, which are field interview reports, where they literally just pull over to people that aren't doing anything wrong and start interrogating them and questioning them and searching them to see if they can figure out a way to arrest them. Galtieri, the sheriff here, his job is to fill the jail every day, and that's what these deputies go out and do. So he's looking at that. I could probably put this one in my win column for another one of my arrests. It really wasn't anything that the kid did. You heard him. He was perfectly reasonable. The kid was respectful. He was courteous. Yes, sir. No, sir. He did every single thing that cop asked him to do. And if you looked at what I posted with that video, you saw the actual training that the deputies are given to do those testings. And you see that, like, when they start to ask, they ask him to get his driver's license and his registration. Well, the training tells them, while they're searching for their driver's license and their registration, start asking them questions to interrupt their thought process, get them to lose focus on what they're doing. And then if you can say, like, where are you coming from tonight? So, and the guy sits there and stops for a second, thinks about, oh, well, I was coming from, and he answers the question. If he doesn't keep reaching in the glove box for that registration, then there's a mark against him. He's DUI. And they literally teach these officers to throw all these obstacles and distract these people. When they're trying to do all these tests, they're giving them very complicated directions. And then after they give them the very complicated directions, they start having a conversation on purpose with them to try and distract them from conducting the test the way they just very complicatedly explained them to do it. And that's the way, if you read the instructions on how these guys are trained to do this, literally it's designed to make everybody fail, which is exactly what they did to this kid.
I know I would have failed, because the instructions he was giving his kid, I would have gone to jail right away, because I would have said, wait a minute, let me get a notepad and pen here, because it's like, I'm not going to remember all this shit that you're asking me to do at one time. And the cop was, the cop's acting like, oh, this is, you should be able to do this with no problem. And I'm thinking, you can do it with no problem, because you're telling this, you're telling him what to do day in and day out. You're telling people this. But somebody who you just pulled over, who's probably nervous, because they probably, most people don't get pulled over on a regular basis by cops. And so whenever they get pulled over, they're thinking, oh, what did I do wrong? Am I going to get a ticket? How much is it going to cost me? Blah, blah, blah. And so they're a little nervous, and I've known people who were extremely nervous because they never had an interaction with cops. And the cop will go, why are you so nervous? And they're like, because I've never been pulled over before. I've never had an interaction with police officers before. So it's just natural to be nervous, but they'll act like, oh, there must be something wrong if you're nervous. And that's what they kind of did with this kid too. They were trying to make like there was something wrong because he was nervous. Well, he's 17 years old, and you're sitting here, throwing all these questions at him and badgering him and repeating the questions, because that's another tactic they use, which is trying to get people to slip up to give a different answer, or even a slightly different answer, and say, oh, I thought you said this, And so you're right. It's these tactics that they're taught to make people nervous and to get them to stutter for just a second, so they can use that as an excuse for, oh, there's something wrong with this kid. He's not acting right.
Well, in that particular video, there was another episode of that, the lying to the kid. The kid was also nervous because he came from California. He graduated 6 months early from high school, which means he's a good student, right?
Right.
And so he comes to go visit his dad, who lives here, and stay with his dad for a while after he got out of school, which is, I guess, one of the parental agreements they had. And so here he is now. He's in Pinellas County. He's going to be with his dad, and he went to a birthday party with some of the family friends that they have, and he's just on his way home. He worked 12 hours that day. He hadn't eaten anything since that morning. He was tired. He wanted to go home. And he had some legalized CBD hemp in his car. And he says that that's not marijuana, that's hemp. I got it from a friend of mine who bought it for $5 a gram at a smoke shop. Here in Florida, they have legalized hemp. It looks just like marijuana. It's the same genetic strain as cannabis, which means if you tested the two genetically, the DNA is the exact same. The difference is one has a higher THC content and the other doesn't. But with the legalization of hemp here in Florida, what that means is the smell of marijuana is no longer probable cause to search a car. The fact that you are looking at something that looks like marijuana is no longer probable cause to arrest somebody. Sheriff Galtieri here, he says you have to have probable cause plus, and the rest of the plus is just assumptions on what you can try and get people to admit. So he asked the guy, and he says, well, I've got some of this stuff. And he says, no, it's a CBD. And the cop lies to him. No, CBD does not come in smokable leafy form. You don't smoke CBD, which if anyone knows about CBD, that's an absolute flat out lie. And so now the kid who doesn't know anything about Florida law, doesn't know about legalized hemp, doesn't know what his friend gave him that he bought at the head shop for $5 a gram, he's now under the assumption that the officer is right and he's wrong, and he bought marijuana from his friend when he didn't even know it. So then he starts getting all nervous about that. Well, gee, I guess I'm going to get arrested for having marijuana in the car, but it wasn't marijuana. It was the legalized hemp. So now the cop is trying to claim that this kid's getting high or possibly DUI on something that's legalized hemp, and that was part of his odor plus is what they call it. After the cop lied to him, he said, oh, then it must be marijuana. So now he's got the kid admitting to marijuana when it isn't. And then so now that he admitted that it's marijuana, now he must be high and he's driving. And those are the assumptions that he went on trying to arrest this kid that were all based on lies that the cop told the kid.
Well, I want to touch on something you just said earlier, which was that these cops have quotas, and they're not called quotas, but they are, police officers who don't have the number that is expected of them to, the number of pulling people over, the number of arrests. They're going to go, you're not doing your job, because they'll sit there and they'll use statistics to say, statistically, we know that X amount of cars, travel over the speed limit, and you haven't written a ticket and blah, blah, blah. And so you haven't been doing your job. And it's just another way of saying, if you don't meet these quotas, which that's what it is, then you're going to be fired because you're not doing your job, or you're going to be reprimanded because you're not doing your job. And
they call those performance reviews here. So it's a quota disguised as a performance review, which is still illegal.
Right, exactly. And that's exactly how they disguise it. Performance reviews. And I'm glad you came up with that, because I didn't know what the name of it was.
Well, there's another interesting aspect of that. About 3 weeks ago, here in the Tampa Bay area, the Tampa Bay Times did a news story about the clerk of the court, Ken Burke, who was complaining that he's has to delay evictions, has to delay court cases, has to delay divorces, because he had to lay off 30% of his staff because he does not have enough money coming in. The money that pays the clerk of the court to process all these court cases is the money that comes from writing citations. And because of COVID-19 and the fact that everyone was forced to stay home and nobody was driving, citations went way down. And so their revenue went way down. And so he's on there in the news article complaining that they need to write more tickets so we can afford more people at the courthouse, so we can process more people through the system and evict more people from their houses. And it was really telling to me, because they didn't even seem embarrassed by that. They didn't even seem to think that there was anything wrong with literally using the people of Pinellas as a harvest to go out there and just criminalize people just so the court system can run more efficiently. It astounded me. And the fact that people just said, oh yeah, we better go out and write more tickets. Right after that article came out, there was cops everywhere writing tickets all over Pinellas County for the last 3 weeks.
Yeah. Again, this is why I wanted to have you on the show, because I believe that, this is for the masses out there. They're not aware of this. They're not aware of how the system works. They're not aware that it's driven by money. That, I remember when in Orange County, the sheriff had sent lobbyists because they wanted more money to buy more equipment to militarize their police department, even to a greater degree than it already was. And I'm like, if you have enough money to pay lobbyists to go to the state capitol to lobby on your behalf to get more money so that you can militarize your police department, there's something wrong. There's too much money as it is. And the fact that you're willing to have, like you said, harvest the citizens of your community to get this money in order for you to continue to grow this industry so that you have more money. It's just a power grab. It's all about power, and it's all about money, and it's not about justice. It's not about doing the right thing.
Well, when I wanted to run for sheriff, one of the things that I did was I literally researched the Pinellas County Sheriff's Department right from all the way back to 1911 when they were originally founded. And the amount of corruption and vice and crap that went on all through this stuff. People were getting shot, trying to run for sheriff. I mean, it was scummy. And then you get into the post World War II era, and the sheriffs were the worst racist people on the planet. They were the ones enforcing all the segregation laws, arresting blacks for being on the beach. They took part in the Pinellas County Sheriff's Department, and the St. Pete Police Department actually took part in a lynching of a gentleman named John Evans here in 1914, where the sheriff actually told the mob where to find the guy to lynch. And it's crazy. In 1964, the Pinellas County Sheriff's Department hired its first black officer, but he was not allowed to arrest white people. And even after the civil rights enactment passed with John Kennedy's support, the fact that that was there in place for almost 1.5 to 2 years before he was finally allowed to arrest a white person. So you have this massive corrupt racist history of the Pinellas County Sheriff's Department going all the way back to day one. And this has permeated itself all the way through till today. A lot of these things have not changed. In 1960, the Pinellas County Sheriff's Department had 10 deputies, 10. One deputy for every 37,500 citizens here in Pinellas County. Now we have over 3,000 members of the Pinellas County Sheriff's Department. That is one for every 354 citizens. So each one of those deputies is going out and trying to milk, harvest money out of just 354 people every single day. And that means they're going to have to pull over a lot more people, harass a lot more people, arrest a lot more people, and try and figure out a way to keep their stats up, when really it's impossible because we're literally over-policed. That's just the sheriff's office. That does not include the St. Pete Police Department, the Clearwater Police Department, the Tarpon Springs Police Department, the other 13 police departments that operate here in Pinellas County. And each one of those police departments is going out there trying to exact their pound of flesh from the people that live within their communities. And this is what is wrong with the police industry. When people talk about defunding, this is what they're talking about.
Well, and the reason they're able to get away with this is because they use fear on the masses. And so they're like, in order to keep crime, the crime rate down, we need these police officers. And they'll sit there and say, we don't have enough police officers. And this is where, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm not, that when there's a call, like for instance, when there was a call for you being at the county clerk, was it?
Yes.
Okay. 6 police officers arrived for you, nonviolent, wasn't raising your voice, wasn't angry, wasn't anything. And yet 6 police officers were called there to handle one man who was being very reasonable and just asking for what was legally a right of yours to do. Each one of these officers, and again, like I said, if I'm wrong, correct me, but each one of these officers are able to write this up as a report that they went to the scene. So now it looks like that each one of these had a incident that they had to go to. So it makes it look like the cops are overworked. Like, well, this is how many scenes I went to today. When in actuality, they didn't have to go to even half of those. But
Correct.
because they feel the need to do overkill, which they do, and this is the deliberate thing as well, which is to like you said, to scare you, because it's 6 against 1. It's not one officer talking to you. It's 6 officers, and they're all playing their little game. Some are good cops, some bad cop, whatever game they choose to play at that moment. And they each get to use this as a notch, as to say, okay, this was something I did today. This is something I did today. This is something. So instead of one incident, it looks like there was 6 incidences. And so when they report this and they go, well, there were 400,000 instances this month, when in actuality there might have been 50,000. But because they had all these officers show up at each one of them was able to count that as an incident. And I know incident isn't the word I'm looking for, but do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah, a call. There you go. That's what I'm looking for. So each one of them gets to count this as a call that they went to. And so it makes their officers look like they're being overworked, when in actuality, that's not the case whatsoever.
Well, an interesting part about that specific incident on that specific day is, while those 5 or 6 officers were in the lobby there harassing me, there was another event going on right out in front of the courthouse at the exact same time. And this particular person was in a hearing, and he was representing himself. He was very nervous, and he carried 3 little pebbles. and each one was for one of his kids. And he put it on the podium when he went up to speak to help calm himself down. And he got berated in the court system. The judge wouldn't let him speak. He was criticized and badmouthed there. Nobody would let him defend himself. And it's a very frustrating feeling to try and do that. So he gets shooken, and his case is over. He starts walking out, and he left his 3 little pebbles on the thing. And one of the deputies went up and just slammed his hand down on his shoulder really hard and almost knocked him off of his feet. And he said, "Get back there and get those things off the podium," you know? So he went up there and got him, but it sent a shock wave down his spine. He has a spine injury. And so he's upset. He goes, "I want the name of that officer who just assaulted me." And they finally give him the name. So he goes out in front of the courthouse and he calls 911 to report an assault by what he thought was a bailiff or somebody that was inside the courtroom. What he didn't realize is the bailiff was a Pinellas County Sheriff's Department, and he just called the Pinellas County Sheriff's Department on the Pinellas County Sheriff's Department. So I'm coming into the courthouse that day to make that public records request, and I see him surrounded by 7 or 8 officers out in front of the courthouse. And I say to myself, he shouldn't be talking to those cops. They're just figuring out a way to arrest him. And they were standing maybe 10 or 15 feet in a circle around him. After I went through my almost arrest and I came back out of the courtroom, he's still there, but now they're standing 4 or 5 feet around him in a tighter circle. And I thought, he's going to get arrested again. I go all the way back to my car, and I think, no, I got to go back. So I come out and I take out my camera. And as I'm walking back up to the scene, they're putting him in handcuffs and they're arresting him. Now, what they arrested him for was false report of a 911 call. And I have his video, I have his 911 call, I have my video of his false arrest that was taking place at the same time as they were trying to arrest me upstairs in the hallway for making a public records request. So this is not something that was unique to me. This happens to a lot of people. And I'm going to be doing a YouTube video of his arrest here in the next few days and putting that out.
Okay, so you know what, you bring up so many great points. I'm doing my best to keep track because there's so much I want to talk about. So one of the things was with the 17-year-old kid at the very end of the video, and what you're just saying right here, I think is very important. Let me give you this statistic first. 85% of people who who become under arrest waive their Miranda rights. 85% right off the top. And almost all innocent people waive their Miranda rights because they think, I'm innocent, I'll tell them what they want to hear, not realizing that the cops are using questions to elicit a certain answer so that they can falsely arrest them. And you said you had put up there on your post on the 17-year-old kid to tell your kids beforehand to not talk to the cops, no matter whether they're innocent or not. Do not talk to the cops, because that's how they get themselves arrested. That's how they get themselves in trouble. And so I would imagine that would be your advice to everybody.
Yes, it is, of course. But I think that we have a duty to our children as parents to let them know that this system is designed to trip them up and arrest them and criminalize them. And they have to protect themselves from that. And the best way that they can protect themselves from that is remaining silent. And if you remain silent, then you don't have anything to worry about. They're going to do whatever they're going to do anyway, but at least you're not helping them criminalize you. You're not assisting them in making things more difficult for yourself. And you're also giving your defense attorney, should you be falsely arrested, a lot more to work with, and a lot less to work with. And we need to do this to all of our kids, because that poor kid's now going to have an arrest on his record for DUI. And when you apply for jobs, have you ever been arrested? It doesn't say, have you ever been convicted? It says, have you ever been arrested? When he goes to apply to college, that's going to be on the college applications. He, by having that arrest alone, whether he's convicted or not, will automatically be barred from at least half the college institutions around America just from that one incident. And so this will follow him for the rest of his life, even if he's found not guilty. And we don't need to allow our children to walk into those types of traps. My daughter, 17 and a half, she knows not to talk to the police. She knows exactly what she needs to do. What that particular 17-year-old should have said was, I'm sorry, I don't answer questions without a parent or a lawyer here. You know, period.
You make a very good point, is that what people need to understand, these cops are going to do what they're going to do. We sit there and we go, we'll waive our Miranda rights. We're innocent. We'll talk to them, because we believe that if we talk to them, then maybe we can see, we'll get them to see reason and they'll let us go. But they've already got their mind made up as to what they're going to do. They're going to do what they're going to do, whether you talk to them or not. So you're right in that sense that You just need to be quiet, because otherwise you do give them more, to work with, and it makes it harder for your defense attorney to stand up for you, because of the way that they question you, and because of how they can manipulate your answers and things of that nature. So
Well,
um,
sometimes I will talk to them. Like I carry a body camera everywhere I go.
mhm.
I have front and rear facing dash cameras, and so I record everything that they do. So sometimes I'll talk to them, but I'm doing it for the same reason that they're doing it. I'm doing it to elicit a conversation with them to prove exactly what they're doing. But I don't suggest other people do that.
I was going to say, you're a professional. I would, so you doing it is a quite different than your average citizen out there who doesn't know what they're about to face. You know what you're facing. You know what the, tricks they like to play, and you know how to handle that. So you doing it is completely different. Um, One of the things I wanted to talk about is, you know, the First Amendment auditors. I think I told you that the whole reason I found your YouTube channels, it came up in my feed because I was watching these First Amendment auditors, and some of these guys are just, complete idiots. I get that they want to challenge the police, and some of them do a good job, and there's a bunch of them that do a horrible job. And one of the things I was impressed by you was how you handled the police. You don't lose your temper, you don't get angry, you don't raise your voice, you use logic and reason with them, and you can see they get dumbfounded because they're not sure how to handle you, because you're not reacting emotionally, which is what they're used to. They want you to react emotionally so they can sit there and have an excuse to arrest you, and you don't do that. You don't feed into that. You don't give them what they're looking for, and so they really don't know what to do with you, which I find brilliant on your part.
Oh, thank you.
So
I enjoy questioning them because each time I do, like I was pulled over and given a citation for doing my campaign signage for being parked when I wasn't parked. And to me, it's fascinating to see the mindset of the officer. When you give him the law of why what you're doing is not an issue, then they immediately will go to the next law that they try and pin on you. When you prove to them that that doesn't make any sense, then they go to the next law to try and pin it on you. And sometimes the thought process is really interesting to document. And that's why I do it.
when I'm sorry. Again, it's not that I'm losing my train of thought. It's that you're saying so many things. I go, well, I want to talk about that. I want to talk about that. So,
Well, we
um,
could chat.
all right. So, tell me about the experience that you had. Like, what came to fruition with the experience you had with wanting to see this file that they wouldn't allow you to see without charging you for it? What happened? Is there a conclusion to that yet?
Well, I filed a criminal complaint against the clerk because she violated Title 10, Chapter 119 by refusing to allow me those records. The only person that committed a crime that day was the clerk, and you saw that they didn't address that at all. And so I filed a criminal complaint against her. It's a misdemeanor, but it's still a crime. I filed a complaint against the officers for their false statements. I filed complaints against the one officer for writing the false report. I filed these with the state attorney's office. I filed them with the Pinellas County Sheriff's Department, and they never called me back. They never did any investigation. They literally didn't bother to do anything, which doesn't surprise me. I did another video recently where I went to go file a criminal complaint against Sheriff Galtieri for literally removing my campaign signage from sidewalks, where I was power washing my sign into the dirt on the sidewalks, which is perfectly legal. And he literally called county agencies to go out and have my signs removed. And so I went down to the Pinellas County Sheriff's Department to file a criminal complaint against that. And I had two of these very high-ranking officers come out and just say, we're not going to do anything with this. We're not even going to file a report. You can't have a report number. We're just going to do nothing. It's done. It's over. Go away. You can stay here if you want, leave, do whatever, but we're not doing anything about it. And when you have a sheriff like Galtieri, who is so dirty and corrupt that they won't even take the report, it's insane. It's insane. In that video, I did a YouTube video about that. In the beginning of the video, I have literally Sheriff Galtieri on video talking about how I want everyone to come and file reports. If any of my officers are doing anything wrong, please, by all means, we always want it, and we'll always look into it. And you can do it anonymously. You can do it by phone or email. You can do it any way you want. We'll definitely, absolutely look into everything. And then you go to the video where they would refuse to even take the report. You see, he goes out and he lies to the public, and the public says, well, there's the sheriff right there on video. And he just said that they'll do all these reports. He must be doing a great job. But they don't know that the reality is he's doing a horrible job. He's just a good liar.
What are your are there any other alternatives, like taking this to the a prosecuting attorney and going, look, I wanted these complaints filed and they refused to do this. Can you not take it to the prosecuting attorney to file the charges from there?
Now, here in Pinellas County, we have a state attorney named Bernie McCabe. He's been a state attorney here for over 28 years now. He, in my opinion, is the single person who is most responsible for the massive corruption within the Pinellas County government, including the police, including the judges, including the mayors and everybody else here in this county. He personally, in my opinion, is responsible for our corruption because he personally refuses to take any action against any of these bad actors for anything. I'd like to give you an example. Here in Pinellas County, we had a deputy named Timothy Verdon who was arresting a guy for mouthing off during a DUI arrest of the driver. So he arrests him, puts him in his car. Well, the guy is drunk and he's taunting the deputy. He says, "You're not a real man. You're not a real man." And the deputy pulls out his gun and bam, 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 shoots the guy right in the friggin' stomach while he's handcuffed in the back of his patrol car. You look it up, Deputy Timothy Verdon. I have a video on my YouTube channel called the Pinellas County Sheriff's Greatest Hits and Beatings and Shootings and Murders. And he's in there. And Sheriff Galtieri comes on the next day and says how Deputy Verdon was a hero because Deputy Verdon claimed that this guy tried to take his gun and they struggled for the weapon and the deputy was going to get killed and his training kicked in and he was able to save himself and it could have been a lot worse if the guy had been able to get some rounds off. And here you have the sheriff giving a news conference out at the scene of the shooting, which literally happened 2 blocks from my house. And they later find out that, of course, it didn't happen that way. There was another deputy there, and the other deputy, the Deputy Verdon, turned to him and said, "You saw him try to take my gun, didn't you?" Well, that deputy was a new recruit. He was one that hadn't drank the Kool-Aid yet. He was one that thought, no, I came to be a good police officer, not a bad one. And he refused to back up the deputy. And then, of course, the logistics of what the deputy claimed were impossible. So about a month later, he had to arrest Deputy Verdon for lying about all of this stuff and shooting the kid and attempting to murder him. And the Deputy Verdon was never criminalized, accused, or charged with making a false report against that man for accusing him of trying to murder a police officer. That guy, if he had died and there wasn't his explanation, that guy he would have gotten away with murdering that guy. If he did live, he almost went to jail for 30 or 40 years for a deadly assault on a police officer with a weapon because Timothy Verdon lied. Now, this same deputy lied about me a year earlier and had me falsely arrested. I've sent the reports in, and Galtieri didn't do anything. Now the guy's out there shooting somebody in the stomach and getting away with that too. Now, he did get arrested. They did fire him. He went through the whole judicial process. Timothy Verdon got 2 years probation. He got it non-adjudicated, which means the case is not even on his record as if it never happened. He then was sued by the guy who he shot for a $750,000 verdict. The state Senate and the sheriff's office went to the legislators and they passed a law making it the responsibility of the Pinellas County Sheriff's Department to pay the $750,000 verdict for Timothy Verdon, which guess what comes out of our tax pockets. Right. That's how the corrupt system works. You have a deputy that literally tried to murder somebody because of something he said, and he still gets covered up. He gets his pension because it was not adjudicated. He gets his pension. He gets to walk away with his pension. So we're paying that dirty deputy who tried to murder somebody a lifelong paycheck, and he shouldn't be. He should have been in jail.
God, you bring up again another good point. You know, I often think out of the hundreds of millions of dollars that have been, that have been given to victims of police shootings, police abuse, and the gamut of it, had we spent a tenth of that money on training and getting rid of people like Verdon and hiring police officers who are actually trained at the proper way, because you go to other countries like Germany where their schooling is for 2 years before they can become a police officer. And here you go 6 months to a junior college and all of a sudden you have a badge and a gun and you're taught more about, self-defense than you are about the law. It's silly to me that citizens like you or I can know more about the law than the people who actually work in it, and that they're allowed to, on a daily basis, violate people's rights, and there are no consequences to it. If you and I violate someone's rights, we get arrested for it. If we make a false arrest, we get arrested for it. If we pull a gun on somebody, we shoot somebody, and it's like, why is there this double standard? And the double standard works in their benefit. Like, why is it that if someone breaks into my house and they flee and I shoot them in the back as they're fleeing, I can get arrested for shooting them because they were fleeing. A cop can shoot you in the back while you're fleeing, and it could be over something silly, not a felony, just something, a disagreement, and they can shoot you in the back, and there's no consequences to that. Why is it that people who work in law enforcement, who should know the law, are held to a lower standard than the average citizen? Why is it that, if you and I go to court and we're charged with something, I'll go, well, I didn't know that was against the law. And the first thing the judge is going to say is that, ignorance to the law is no excuse. But a cop can claim, I didn't know that was against their constitutional rights, but it's okay, and they get away with it. Why?
Well, first off, there's actually a Supreme Court ruling that says if a cop doesn't know the law, it's no big deal. If he arrests somebody, it's no big deal. But yeah, but then on our part, there's so many laws out there that literally nobody in law enforcement, nobody in the justice system or judicial system, the Department of Justice, nobody can tell us how many laws there are because there are so many. Literally, no one can count them. There's so many. And so we're supposed to know every single one of those to the letter because they're going to try and criminalize us for that, to harvest us and take our money. And it's a system that's designed to let them do whatever they want. And it's a myriad of different things that causes that. The police industry policies, the use of force policies, the things that they do, it's so widely covers whatever they try and do wrong that the police officer has to do something outside his scope of employment, outside his lawful duty in order to be held accountable and to be stripped of qualified immunity. But they've extended that so far and so wide. It used to be, you remember the old movies, if the cop shot somebody, he didn't have a gun, oh my God, it's a big deal. It's a big deal. You're going to get in so much trouble. Let's throw the drop gun down. And they still use drop guns today, but now they don't even worry about that because they've changed the use of force parameters from what they call necessary, meaning I absolutely had to use the force, all the way to the other end of the spectrum, which is reasonable. Like this guy that just got shot in Wisconsin that was getting back in his car 7 times in the back. They're going to get away with that because there supposedly was a knife under the front seat. He never touched it. He never brandished it. But there's something, the ex-wife was yelling, he got a gun, he got a gun. And so the officer's going to say, well, that person said he got a gun. I was afraid he was going to turn around and shoot me. I was in fear for my life, so I get to shoot him 7 times in the back, and I will not get in trouble for that because he was within the confines of his job description, being in fear for his life because of the reasonable measure of it. And so they've expanded these coverages to expand the qualified immunity to let these officers get away with all these things. And then you have, once something happens like that, the investigation kicks in and they're investigating themselves, which is asinine. There's something that we have in the judicial system called where there's a conflict of interest. Clearly, this is the most obvious conflict of interest you can possibly imagine, having your friends investigate you. I can tell you this, if I was in charge of investigating me, I would never get in any trouble. How about you?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's crazy. So when I'm running for sheriff, I'm talking about setting up an individual community police accountability board that I will actually deputize, that will actually have badges and be able to go and investigate these events simultaneously with the police industry and have the same access to all the data and information and evidence that they have. And when they're done with their investigation, the citizens' investigation better parallel each other. And that's what I wanted to implement, which is one of the reasons they don't want me in there, because I will hold these guys accountable. So you have the use of force, you have the unions, which let them get away with everything. There's what's known as the Police Officer Bill of Rights, which is actually codified in our law here, which says that the officers have all these different rights. Like you're not even allowed to question an officer after a crime. He's not allowed to be questioned until after you provide him and his lawyer, the union lawyer, with every bit of evidence, every witness statement, every transcript, every video. You have to give the police officer all of this information, let him and his lawyers look it over again, and then you get to question them. Now ask yourself this, if we had to do that with every criminal suspect in the United States, how many of them would you think would get convicted? You're giving them all the information they need to tailor their alibi, to explain exactly what they need to do. And so you have the unions, you have the use of force parameter, you have the police officer bill of rights, you have the police investigating themselves, you have all these things coming into play, which means they never get in trouble. And the people, the citizens have put up with that for 100 years. I just see now with all the protests that are going, people are just starting to wake up to what's really going on. And I'm glad to see it.
I am too, and so that was another thing I want to talk to you about, because several times now you've stated that this is what citizens are willing to put up with, and it's like, how did we get to this point where we were willing? Like, why do we put up with police like doing this? Is it because we've been fed this propaganda that police are good, and that because I know that when they do jury trials, for instance, and you get these lawyers who pick these juries, and they'll ask these questions like, if someone's arrested, do you feel like that person must have done something wrong? And well over 90% of them will believe that somebody did something wrong. If there's in that courtroom, they must have done something wrong, because the police officer wouldn't have arrested them if they hadn't done something wrong. And so
the police industry has tricked America into thinking that the law now says you are guilty until proven innocent, which is the complete opposite of what our Constitution and our Bill of Rights says. I don't think that they should be publicizing people's arrests. Here in Pinellas County, they had the Pinellas County deputies chase 3 14, 15, and 16-year-old girls into a pond. They were chasing them without their emergency lights on. And they were claiming that they refused to stop. Well, if the lights aren't on, guess what? You're not obligated to stop. They knew where they chased these girls into a cemetery, drove them right into a pond, and then all the officers stood around for over 5.5 minutes while the girls screamed for their lives 15 feet from the edge of the shore, and they drowned. And you can see the video, the deputy saying, "Oh yeah, can you hear them screaming? I can still hear them screaming. Yeah, oh, they're dead now. That car sank now. They're dead. They're whatever, And they're literally discussing these women these young kids screaming for their lives and drowning to death when they did nothing to save them. Now, at the end of that, Sheriff Galtieri said, well, we're not doing an investigation because our deputies didn't do anything wrong. And you have these kinds of instances going on, and the people the Sheriff's Department went and did a press conference. And what he said is, these 3 girls, they're black youths from South St. Pete, they've been arrested 27 times between them, and they've been arrested for this, and they've been arrested for that, and they've been arrested for this, and they've been arrested for that. And what he's doing is he's dog whistling to the racist white community that, hey, these people needed to be exterminated because, look, they're bad girls. And he actually said in a press conference that these were not good girls. Sheriff Robert Galtieri actually said that about these 3 teenagers that his deputies killed. And that just appalls the living crap out of me, that a deputy would do, or a sheriff that would do something like that. So I went and I looked up their conviction records and their arrest records. They were arrested for runaway. They had trouble homes that they were in. They were arrested for minor things. And most of the time, I'd say 92% of the time in that particular case, they weren't convicted of anything. Some of those girls were not convicted of any crimes at all, but he painted them with this broad racist brush. They're black. Here's all the times that we arrested them, when, of course, they arrested a lot of black people here in Pinellas County for other reasons other than they committed a crime. And he gets to do this. And then the general population, 80% of them here in Pinellas County that are white, go, yep, they were bad girls. They deserve to die. Okay, next case. And that's it.
Wow. I want to say this to my listeners, to the viewers. This is probably, I don't think I've stumbled over my words in a podcast as much as I have today. And there's 2 reasons. One, because I normally don't do podcasts this early, but I mean, that's on me. And number 2, it's because the things you are saying, I'm so emotional about. Like, I'm so outraged by hearing these stories, because I see people who buy into that bullshit. I see them on Facebook to go, oh, well, if you don't want to get arrested by the cops, don't do something wrong. And I'm going, you have no fucking clue about what you're talking about. Your white privilege is showing, it's blinding. That's how bad it is, because you honestly believe that everybody that the cops talk to, the cops arrest, that these are bad people, that they must have done something wrong. And that's not the case. I don't even believe that's always the case. I think that, again, these manufactured lies that they come up with against people that just simply they consider being disrespected. They'll find a reason to arrest you if you don't say, it's just like the judge. When the judge tells the person, I want a yes or no answer, and the guy goes, yeah, and he goes, I said I want a yes or no answer. So this judge, because he sits up as a judge, he thinks he's God, that if this man doesn't answer him with a yes instead of yeah, he's going to put him back in jail or increase his sentence. And it's like, are you that pompous of an ass that you think you're so important that you want to show your dominance over people to the point that you're willing to ruin their lives?
You just described 80% of the judges that are sitting on benches today.
Exactly. And if you ever want to listen to something that will outrage you, there's a podcast. It's called Wrongful Conviction, and it's about the people who are part of the Innocence Project, and these judges, these prosecutors, these cops who are not just willing, they're not just willing participants, they're gladly want to ruin people's lives, and they don't care the effect that they have on people's lives because they feel justified in their actions.
And even after the Innocent Project proves that they were innocent, those same prosecutors and same cops will say, well, I think he was guilty anyway and he deserved to be in jail. Like, what the hell are you talking about?
There was a gentleman who was on death row, okay? And there was supposedly no DNA evidence. So apparently there was some. And the state attorney found out about it, had it tested, found out that it cleared this guy. They weren't going to say anything. Even though it cleared him, they were not going to say anything. The only reason it came to light is because the lab technician who did the DNA testing said, this isn't right. You can't let this man.
He stayed in jail for what, another 4, 5, 6 years because of that?
All right, so here's what happened. So the guy ends up finding out that, through whatever process that, there was, this DNA that cleared him. They let him out of prison, only for the state attorney's office to sit there and go, oh no, see, in the state of Florida, only he can request that his DNA be tested. But the guy never requested his DNA to be tested because they told him there was no DNA to be tested. So they put him back in prison. Now, this state attorney had to deliberately go, this is an innocent man that I'm willing to fuck up his life even more than I already have because I want to be right, because I want to win. And I go, what kind of asshole do you have to be to do that to a person? And you know that if he does it to one or she does it to one, that they'll do it to more. And this is what goes on in our judicial system, in our criminal justice system. It's just, it's rampant. And so for people to sit there and go, blue lives matter, not all cops are bad. Maybe not. But I will tell you this, that the good cops are out there are silenced because of the head of the departments, because of the police unions, because of that thin blue line that you're never supposed to cross. Because if you do, it'll be your ass that's on the line. And, like that cop that you said, he just came out of rookie school. And so he wanted to be a good cop. And so he was one of the few who would actually speak up because they know once they've been in there and they had that indoctrination of it's them against us and we always have to stick together even if we have to lie. That's the culture
that good deputy that day. He was attacked by the fellow officers and he was run out of the business.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what happened. So, good cops can't be silenced anymore. They cannot be silent. And I understand where they're coming from because they have a family to take care of. And I've told this story before. I know 2 detectives from the Miami Police Department who were set up to be killed because they had come out against some crooked cops, and they ended up running, not just quitting, they ended up leaving the entire county and heading north because they knew their lives were in danger because these cops were that crooked and willing to kill them because of what they exposed. And that's rampant throughout the country.
Well, 2 things in response. We talked earlier about how the police harvest the citizens for the money, right? We're literally a crop for them. And if you just picture the police as being the pickers, the people that go out to the field and pick the crop, but the state attorney, he's the farmer. He's the one that is in charge of the whole farm. He's the one that goes out and says, this is how much I want picked today, and this is the area that I want it picked from. And so when you have that mindset as the state attorney, you're the farmer. When you go through this whole process and you went through all the trouble to pick a crop, that guy that they convicted, you don't want to put that crop away. You don't want to let that crop go. And they get this mindset that it's losing if there's someone that they convicted and gets away. They lost a crop. They lost something that they had harvested. And they just can't wrap their minds around that. It's disgusting.
One of the things I'm glad you brought that back up, because one of the things I want to talk to you about is I have a close friend who lives in Finland, and he studies law over there. And he said one of the things that's different, because their system is so much better than ours. It's crazy how different our systems are. But he said in our justice system, we focus on justice, not law. So they're focused on doing the right thing. What is the right thing in this particular case? Not what is necessarily the law, because, as you know, I'm not a big Bible fan, but you know, the letter of the law killeth. I truly believe that. But cops, judges, prosecutors use that to their advantage, and they'll use the letter law because, as you said earlier, there are so many laws. There's no way that in fact, I can't remember the gentleman's name who said on a daily basis, the average citizen breaks 3 laws a day. And
He wrote a book, 3 felonies a day.
3 felonies a day. Yes, exactly. And we don't even know it because there are that many freaking laws out there to be able to arrest us for anything that they want to. So we could be completely innocent and whatever it is that they initially contacted us for, but they can find something because of the number of laws that are out there.
Well, let me give you a quick example. I've been reporting bad cops for a number of years. I've had the evidence, turned them in, they weren't doing anything. And this went on for years with both the Clearwater Police and Sheriff Robert Galtieri. So finally, I got fed up with it. And I told Sheriff Galtieri in an email well before the 2016 elections that I was going to run for sheriff against you to expose your massive corruption because you need gone. And his response a couple of weeks later was to have my then 10-year-old daughter arrested in handcuffs for supposedly assaulting her mother, which she didn't do. He then, the following weekend, when she was supposed to come back to me and tell me what had happened, they were worried about that. So they Baker Acted her and sent her to an insane asylum for 3 days. And then a couple of weeks after that, he actually had deputies file 4 false felony charges against me. And then he had me tracked with a Stingray cell phone tracking device illegally without a warrant. He then had me arrested the day before my final custody hearing so that I would lose my child. Now, one of the deputies that filed these false reports against me was that Timothy Burden, who shot that handcuffed guy in the back of the seats. And this was an event where I lived in a rented house, and the owner of the house kept having a realtor come over who was old and insane. And so we would come out of the bathroom and she'd be standing in our living room showing the house when no one called us, no one informed us. And we had sent emails, letters, no trespassing signs all over the place. Stop coming in this house. You don't have the right to do that. Lease law clearly makes it illegal for her to do that. And so I come out of my bathroom again. She's here. She's yelling and screaming. I have the right to be here. I'm telling her to get out. And so finally I get her out the front door, but in my house, the door opens out. So she's standing in the doorway. I can't close my door. So I go out the front porch and I get my hose. And there's a fairly short front porch. And I'm going to clean off my porch now with the water. And I'm coming out here with the hose. You need to back off. You need to back off. So finally the customer that she was with pulls her off the porch and they go out to the front. I put the hose away, go back in the house. Well, Deputy Timothy Burden comes. They have this conversation out front. I watch him. He goes in my mailbox illegally without a warrant, pulls out my mail. He sees who it is. He gets on the phone. Next thing you know, they're trying to come up with charges against me because of who I am. I'm the guy that just said I was going to run against Sheriff Galtieri. And so what he did is he filled out a report that said that I had soaked this woman with a hose. In his report, he detailed about how he had witnessed her. Well, he didn't at first. The first report just says that I did it. And then they realized that there's no corroborating evidence. So 3 days later, they went and amended the reports, and they each put, the 2 deputies that were there, each put statements in the reports how they had seen this woman's pant leg soaking wet from the knee down to her shoe. And Deputy Verdon actually testified in a deposition that he saw the water droplets dripping off the cuff of her pants onto her shoe, okay? And this was what they had arrested me for. It was abuse of an elder that carried a minimum 3 years in jail. So they were trying to convict me of abusing an elderly person and by squirting her with this hose, and that I would go to jail automatically for 3 years if I was convicted. Now, what was interesting about that day is I had video of that day. The woman was wearing shorts. Now, I also reported them for making all those lies, the lying on the depositions. How could both these deputies have put in their reports that they witnessed this woman's pants being soaked from the knee down to the shoe and watched the water drip off her cuff when she was wearing shorts that day? It was clearly a lie, clearly a fabrication, and of course, they didn't do anything about it. And this is what happens with a lot of different people. If you stand up for your rights, you're an enemy of the state. If you dare to assert your rights, you're an enemy of the state. If you don't bow down and give the correct authority, you're an enemy of the state. If you don't do exactly what you're told when you're told, you're an enemy of the state. And this is how they treat enemies of the state. And they treat a lot of people like that just because they need the money.
So nothing happened to them, I take it. Nothing.
No, of course not. There wasn't even an investigation. I went and got the public records of the report that I filed for this deputy lying. And the only thing that happened was they sent it to Sheriff Galtieri, and the only message in it was FYI. That was the sum of the investigation on Timothy Verdon lying under oath in a police report and lying under oath in a deposition to falsely accuse me of a crime that would have sent me to jail for a mandatory 3 years when I did nothing wrong.
And they would have felt completely justified and okay with ruining your life just because they don't like you.
Yes.
That's the... And again, we talked about this before the show, the mentality of police officers. I have a friend who's a psychologist who used to do psych evaluations of police officers before they would get hired. And when earlier on in his career, he went to his supervisor to say, the results are the exact same as those evaluations that we give to criminals who are in prison. And his supervisor goes, yes, I know. You have to excuse that and forget about it, because otherwise we'll never be able to hire anyone to be a police officer. And so that tells you something. There was research that was done too that showed that police officers generally withdraw from healthy social contact. It's mainly because of their profession that they only socialize with one another. And you don't have this with other professions. You don't even have this with like people who, firefighters, firefighters,
IRS tax collectors.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we all socialize as in different groups. We don't just stick to one group, but there's this culture in the police profession that we have to stick together. And so they do that even in social settings. They won't put themselves out there. And again, this is a generalization, but as a rule of thumb, this is how they act. And they might have a neighbor friend here, a neighbor friend there, but for the most part, everything they do revolves around their profession. All their friends revolve around their profession. And so you have this unhealthy social lack of contact with the public to where you get into that mindset that's cultivated by these departments to say it's them against us. And that's why we've got to stick together. That's why we have to socialize together and always have each other's backs. And they've created this. And then they wonder why, when people start revolting, that we have an issue with them. That they completely act surprised. It's no difference than Americans who sit there and go, "Why are Middle Easterns pissed off at us?" Have you not seen what we've done to them over the decades? Do you not know what's been going on? We would be pissed if it happened to us. But how can we be so oblivious to that?
Well, the general population believes the propaganda. It's that simple. As I run for sheriff and I've been prominent in exposing police corruption for the last 10 years, I wind up having a lot of interesting subsets of the population here contact me. And one of the interesting subsets of that population is deputies' wives. And I get a lot of deputies' wives that contact me because their deputies, their husbands, their ex-husbands are such psychotic maniacs, murderers, horrible, terrible people. And they're doing all kinds of crimes. They're being like sadistically torturous to people that live here. and they come home and they brag about this stuff and they talk about this stuff. And they get to the point where their wives are terrified of them and don't want to have anything to do with them. And when they try and report this to the sheriff's office, what's going on, they get no response at all. And I have several of them that talk about, like, well, there was one recently, Deputy Timothy Crane. We talked about that before the show started.
Right. I wanted to talk about that.
Where his wife actually was telling me some of the things that he would say to her. They would take a person who they thought was rude or belligerent to them. They put them in a police car, throw in a tear gas grenade, and close the door, and let these people literally suffocate to the point where they pass out on tear gas while they stand around the car laughing at the people kicking the doors and trying to get out. That's funny to them. He was a school resource officer, and when he had trouble students that didn't pay him the kind of respect he thought he should get, he would walk up to them and stand really close to them and bully them into the corner. And if the person tried to get away and go by them, if they brushed against him, he would arrest the student for assault on an officer. He would do horrible things to these different people on a regular basis that he thought was funny. And then he would sit around and laugh about it with his other deputy friends. So you say they're only friends with other cops. That's because they can't talk about the things that they do without other people going, what the hell is the matter with you? But their other deputy friends don't say that. They say, ha ha, good one.
And so, as I had said at the beginning, and it's like, this episode isn't about shitting on cops. It's not. It's to bring it's to bring to light the problems within the different police departments throughout this country and the mentality that they have, because there are some good cops out there.
Well, let me give you the breakdown here.
Okay.
I've investigated police for the last 10, 11 years now. I've spoken to several cops, good and bad. I've talked to people all over the country that are in the business, people that have been in the business, former cops that support me and call me. And basically what I've been able to extrapolate from that is that each police industry across the country is virtually the same. That every police agency will typically have about 1/3 of their officers that are just absolute assholes, that like to beat people up for the fun of it, like this Timothy Crane guy, that like to bully people, that like to falsely arrest people to get their stats up because they don't care. Really bad, sadistic police officers that should never have a badge and a gun. About 1/3 of every agency is comprised of these kinds of people. Then you go on the complete other end of the spectrum, and you've got 1/3 of the agencies that are really good cops. They got in it for the right reason. They want to help their community. They're caring. They're empathetic. They're exactly what you would want a police officer to be. And then you have that middle third. And that middle third will go either way. They'll go rogue and nasty if they're with a nasty cop. They'll go nice and friendly if they're with a friendly cop. And what I want to do here in the Pinellas County Sheriff's Department is to literally come into the agency and literally get rid of that bad third, take the good third and promote them into a position of power and authority to train the middle third and hopefully save the middle third. And that's what I think needs to happen to police agencies all across this country.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because I was going to ask you, how did you think the officers would respond if you were to win and become, sheriff of Pinellas County? Like, what kind of support do you think you would get from those officers?
Well, the bad ones obviously would be terrified. I have actually publicly stated that I will arrest the deputy Howard Skaggs, the one who chased the 3 black girls into the pond. I will arrest him for murder, because he not only murdered those 3 black girls, chasing them into a pond, but in 2002, he chased another black teenager into a pond, followed him into the pond personally, beat him unconscious, and held him under the water and drowned him and killed him, and then made a joke about the last time he saw him, he was doing the backstroke across the pond. So then you have to ask yourself, in Pinellas County, how many black teenagers must a Pinellas County deputy murder in a pond before he gets in trouble? And the answer to that question is, we don't know. All we know is it's more than 4.
Wow. That's,
sorry, but this is the reality that I'm faced with trying to clean up here.
It's just, again, I wish that I could get people to understand. Those people, I know there are people like us who get this, who understand this, but there's that, and I don't even know what percentage of people out there who just don't understand how, how corrupt these police departments are. And I'm like you, I know a lot of good cops. I know, there's this kid who ended up becoming a police officer, and I did my very best to talk him out of it, because he's such a bright guy, and and I know he went in there for the right reasons. And I told him, I said, it will change you as a person. And I used to be a military police officer many years ago, and in the military, it's not I'm going to say it's not as prevalent as it is in the civilian police departments. As
There's
far
no
as,
harvesting. There's
right,
no
exactly
need to
right.
harvest for money.
We certainly had people who were racist. We had those cops who were, who thought because they're a cop that they deserved a certain amount of respect that that was due to them and would take advantage of it. We had all of that, just not to the level that you have it in civilian police departments. And I realized when I got out of the Army that this was not something I wanted to do, because I saw just how much worse it was in these departments throughout the country. And I knew police officers personally who were friends of mine because I used to own a gym. And I always thought it was funny how these police officers would criminalize kids, and just jump down their asses about because they were smoking pot, and arrest them, and and if they were underage, call their parents and make a criminal offense out of this. And in the meantime, the majority of them are using steroids. And I go, how do they're both illegal, but you justify you taking steroids because it's you and it's okay. But some kid that's out smoking pot on the beach, well, he's a felon. It's like, how do you justify the hypocrisy in your mind? And that's what I find with a lot of police officers. I find that a lot of them are too damn young and immature to be carrying around a gun and a badge. I know one cop who was doing over 80 miles an hour on the beach. The reason he was doing 80 miles an hour over the beach is because he saw a car driving down the beach that was doing 5 miles over the speed limit. He told us while he's sitting there with us, I'm going to let him get down the beach a little way. That way I can haul ass down there to catch him and turn on the lights. Because to him, that was a show of power. That was exciting. So he let the guy get 100 yards up the beach before he actually went and chased him, because he wanted there to be a chase. And it's like, when you have this childish mentality and these people who are carrying around loaded weapons and use them at will, how do we justify as a society allowing these clowns to have the power of death in their hand on their hip? I mean, every time a cop comes up to a car, he's got his hand on his weapon. Why? And I get the whole thing that you need to protect yourself. But if you feel that threatened by people, you really are in the wrong business, as far as I'm concerned. If you can't handle a woman who's talking to you and it might be belligerent, yeah, she might be being a bitch, or or a lack of a better word. But
But
to
you, as a
shoot
cop, should be the
her,
professional.
right, exactly. But to shoot her because you feel threatened, are you kidding me? You have no business as a man or a woman to be a police officer if you're feeling threatened just because someone talking to you and might be raising their voice. And so,
Here in Pinellas County, Sheriff Robert Galtieri, our actual sheriff, was driving down one of the main streets in the city, and a black woman got over for, it's a 4-lane road, and he was in the right-hand lane, and he was getting ready to pull up to the first person at the red light, right? And this black woman came across all 4 lanes and got in the lane in front of him, pissed him off. So he starts following her. He's going to go after her, right? And so as soon as she starts going a little faster than the speed limit, he just puts on the lights and he starts chasing her. And she doesn't even know that he's a cop because he has an undercover SUV. So it takes her a little while. Now he's on the microphone saying that she's fleeing and eluding, right? So he finally gets her into a parking lot in a bank. He gets out and he rips open the door, tries to pull her out of the car. She doesn't even really understand what's going on yet. And Sheriff Galtieri literally grabbed this black woman by her hair with 2 handfuls of hair and is yanking her out of the car by her hair until he literally pulls her hair out of her head. This was not a weave. This was her actual hair out of her head. And that didn't raise an eyebrow. The media didn't say a thing about that. When you have an actual sheriff that treats a woman like that, much less a white sheriff who treats a black woman like that, what does that say to all the rest of the officers that work here about how they're going to be allowed to treat a black woman moving forward? When he never got in any trouble about that. And I look at myself, and maybe you might think this the same way, but I look at under what circumstances would I feel that it was okay to reach into a car and grab a woman by her hair and yank her out of that car? And I can't come up with a situation. I think maybe if she was in there stabbing a child,
right,
I mean, I'd have to go to that kind of extreme before something like that would even be plausible to me. But him Minor traffic stop. Let's grab the black woman by her hair and yank her out of the car. When you have a sheriff that's that racist, what does he teach his other deputies? When you have bad officers, it's because the officer at the top is bad. If you have a bad cop or a bad agency, it's because the upper level management is bad. The entire chain of command is bad. Because if they weren't, this stuff wouldn't be happening.
I've said that myself many times, and that's when I heard, oh, well, it's because of the police unions. Because I said, you know, you can't have bad officers unless you have bad leaders. Bad leaders good leaders will not allow bad officers to stay on the force. And that's when I was told, oh, well, it's not just that, it's the police unions. But now that you've made it clear that, you know, these, you know, leaders are allowing these police unions to have the power that they have, and so they can play to, you know, so that they can play it off as if it's not their fault. That makes so much sense. Do you think you know, you raised another good question, which is, do you think the media is complicit with these police departments to I guess that's a yes.
Oh my God, absolutely. There's no question that they are complicit. In fact, I've gotten into multiple arguments with the chief editor of the Tampa Bay Times because he refuses to write stories about this sheriff and the crappy things that this sheriff is doing. He refused to write the story about him pulling the black woman's hair out. Sheriff Galtieri refused to debate me. That would be a story in any other area, not here. When I did my power washing sign work, that would have been a story in any other area, but not here. When government workers started, literally, I'm power washing my name into the sidewalk dirt, okay? So all I'm doing is I'm just moving dirt and showing clean concrete that says McLynas for sheriff. It's not vandalism, it's not graffiti, it's not painting, it's nothing. But they actually had government workers with white paint and rollers going out to these locations and going over the clean concrete with my name on it with a roller and white paint, okay? That would have been a story in any other community. When Sheriff Galtieri has a massively COVID-infected jail, and I actually found two situations where the person at the jail was so sick that they sent him to the hospital. And they get to the hospital there, they had to do a special COVID transport, which people have the hazmat suits and everything, takes the guy to the hospital. They get to the hospital, and the hospital will not admit this person. And the reason the hospital won't admit this person is because if they're an inmate, the hospital requires that a deputy stay there and watch the inmate. But none of the deputies wanted to stay in the COVID ward with them. So they refused to take the inmate. And so because of that, they're sitting out in front, they call back to the jail, and I have all the documentation of this. They call back to the jail and they say they won't take him. And the jail says, well, don't bring him back here. So these deputies on two different occasions went and got a alcohol monitoring bracelet, put it on the COVID infected half dead guy and said, see you later, and left him out in front of the hospital. Now, that would be a massive story in any other area. The fact that I was offering to end all cannabis enforcement here in Pinellas County and turn this county into a cannabis-friendly community, which means we would double our tourism in 2021 and save our COVID-infected, damaged economy. The newspaper would not even put that story out there. And the fact that I would defund some of the police agencies and use it to create tiny homes for the homeless, or instead of arresting people for personal use drugs, I would offer them treatment. I had so many good policy positions, but the local media here refused to say any of it to the people of Pinellas County, because the media who works with the sheriff were concerned that if the people knew that they actually had me as a choice, they would win, vote for me, and I would win. So they don't say anything. And this has gone on for 10 years. All of the changes that I've offered to make, all the things I've offered to done, all the exposure of the Sheriff Galtieri's dirty criminal acts, they have not put any of that in the local media because they don't want me to win.
Okay, so there's two segments I want to talk to you about. Let's talk about first you ran in 2016 for sheriff, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and so what happened in 2016?
In 2016, I had to fight all those false criminal charges and get those resolved. I got all those thrown out about 3 months before the sheriff's election. I was already signed up. I only campaigned for 3 months. I spent less than $1,600. The only place I campaigned was on Facebook, and I got over 100,000 votes here in Pinellas County. I set the state NPA, non-party affiliate, record for the state of Florida.
Wow.
But it wasn't enough to win.
Right. Okay. So now in 2020, you were going to run for sheriff, and what happened?
Well, this time, realizing that even if I got all the NPA votes, it still wouldn't be enough to win. I needed to run as a Democrat against Galtieri's Republican to be able to get the Democratic votes, because there's a lot of people that just go into the polls and they just go D, 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 D. So
Right.
basically in most counties, in this county, if you put a dead cat as the Democratic candidate, he would get at least 40% of the vote. So basically, I thought if I could get that dead cat 40% plus everything based on my platform, I should be able to beat this guy pretty easily. So what happened was the dirty Democratic Party here in Pinellas County, at the very last minute, put up a candidate to run against me. They gave him $45,000 worth of dirty money in less than 3 weeks. This guy had just got done running for Clearwater City Council and was only able to obtain 14% of the vote, but he didn't have the dirty money behind him. So you have a group of Democrats who actually want Sheriff Galtieri to win. They're the racist white people that like to beat everybody up, arrest everybody, everybody's a criminal mentality, and they don't want somebody who is going to not arrest people for cannabis or give people their freedoms or actually follow the Constitution. And so they backed this guy. And this guy did not advertise. There was no signs put out. There was nothing going on. But he wound up getting 56% of the vote in the primary between he and I. Now, we had primary workers at the actual polling position. And as he's sitting there behind the primary after the polls are closed, he's watching all these cars pull up with the ballot boxes from all the other precincts, from all the other, I think there was 600 precincts here that were collecting ballots. And these cars kept pulling up, unloading these boxes. And you're never going to guess who those cars were.
The Sheriff's Department?
Pinellas County Sheriff's Departments. Each one of them with a single deputy in it, which is a violation of campaign law. Those ballots are never supposed to be out of the view of an official poll worker. And yet here, my opponent, Sheriff Galtieri, was going around the entire county and picking up all these votes. Now, what's interesting about that is I'm watching the results on the screen. I'm watching the results on the news, and it says I'm winning by 56%, and the other guy's winning by 35% or whatever. And so I'm watching that, and then literally the next screen, same numbers, reverse. Now he's beating me by 56%, and I've got the 35%, literally instantly. Those numbers did not change from when there was 1% of the vote all the way through the voting was counted. He's sitting out behind the official supervisor of elections, and he's watching the newscast on his phone, and it's saying that 100% of the votes have been tallied, yet he can see all the Pinellas County deputies' cars that haven't even brought the votes to the supervisor election yet. And after that, those numbers still didn't change. All those cards came in, all those ballots came in, the numbers still didn't change. They documented that they had, like 30,000 mail-in ballots that hadn't been counted. Those mail-in ballots were counted, those numbers didn't change. So you've got a lot of dirty politics going on here, and the object of the game was to put this guy that had no chance of winning against Galtieri into the race to knock me out because they were afraid that I would beat Galtieri.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you, I think that, one of the things about my show is that we want to highlight the problems that we have in our community, regardless of what topic it is we're talking about. But it's not just enough to highlight the problems. What we want to do is find solutions. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to have a podcast here in a couple of weeks that we're going to talk about, is it time for a third party? And I personally believe that we're ripe for a third party that can actually win. And I think that maybe that, because you're right, the Democratic Party is corrupt. The Republican Party is corrupt. They're both corrupt. And that's why our system's been failing us for the longest time, because they don't have the best interest of the citizens of this country. They only have their own interest at heart. So, they don't, and there's example after example after example to prove this. So you're going to run in 2024, correct?
Right.
Okay. So I want to start something now and start a grassroots campaign and getting you volunteers, getting donations to you now. Start them now, not wait till 3 months out or even a year out.
I am doing that actually.
Okay, already. Great. Because
but there's something I also want to touch base with you about. I know what's going wrong with the two-party system too. And here in Pinellas County, we had over 600,000 registered voters. About 240,000 or whatever of them were Democrats. About 250,000 were Republicans. We've got 199,000 registered independents. Now, when I ran as an independent, I was an independent for a number of different reasons. And the reason is because there's things that the Republican Party does that I do not like. There's things that the Democratic Party does that I do not like. And if you run as a Democrat or you run as a Republican, you're automatically painted with all of the sins of either party. And you can't get out of that. So This year, when I ran as a Democrat, as soon as I put my name D next to my name, all of a sudden I was being accused of being all these things, which I was not, just because that D was next to me. I'm going to get rid of guns. Well, I am a pro Second Amendment advocate. People ask me, what are you going to do about guns? My answer is the same every single time: shall not be infringed. That's it. That's my answer every single time. But yet, because I had that D, I was now anti-gun. Right. I've been accused of being anti-vaxxer, anti-masker. I mean, all these things that whatever the Democratic Party does, I'm accused of. Now, in the primary, I had all this support all across the state. I had put out 1,200 of my power washing campaign signs. My campaign was going great. Everybody's supporting me. Looks like this should be easy. But in the primary, only the Democratic candidates or registered voters were allowed to vote in the Democratic primary. So here, all these supporters of mine that were both Republican and independent went down to the polls to vote for me, and my name was not even on their ballots. The sheriff's race was not even on their ballots because this was only a Democratic primary. So I could have easily gotten 100,000 votes for my position to put me in that position, but because it was a closed primary and only Democrats were allowed to vote, all those people that went down to vote for me were barred from doing so. So you have the independents, which literally what they did by signing up as independents, removed themselves from the seat at the table. They don't have a primary. There's no such thing as a non-party affiliate party. There isn't. You have the Libertarian Party, which is their own separate party, but they've never been able to get organized, and they've never been able to field any really good candidates that the people would accept. So you have that minor party that also takes away from the process. They have their own candidates, they have their own elections, they have their own everything, but they're really a sidestep of the political process that is really marginalizing themselves by being there. So my position was, the way to win in 2024 is to literally start a new party within the party. What I'm talking about now is we're starting here in Pinellas County, the Independent Democratic Party of Pinellas County. And what I'm doing is I'm saying to the 200,000 independent voters, you got screwed. They allowed literally 1.8% of the population was able to decide that you were not going to get me as a sheriff because you signed up as a non-party affiliate. So what I'm advocating now is I want the 200,000 independent registered voters and the libertarian voters to come. Let's take over the Democratic Party. Let's all switch to the Democratic Party so we have a seat at the table. Let's not put our money into the Democratic Party at all. We will have our own PAC, our own separate funding, our own separate donations, so that when we're ready to take on these candidates, we will have our own money to counter their $45,000, $50,000 worth of dirty money that they put this Santana guy up with. And we'll have our own in my PAC where I can counter that same money with him, and we can level the playing field by taking them over. Now, if you want to be an NPA, be an NPA. Just a month before the election, sign up as a Democrat and vote in the primary, whatever you need to do. And you want to go back to an NPA after the election, go ahead. But this, unfortunately, is the playing ground that we're being dealt. And we as people, intelligent people, we need to understand how to play that game. And the best way we can play it isn't by starting our own party from the scratch, which is what the libertarians have been trying to do for years. Literally, instead, the people that think this way should literally take over the Democratic Party.
I like that a lot, to the point where when I have this podcast in a couple of weeks, I will bring that point up as in fact, because I think that's actually pretty brilliant. So I like that. So obviously you need a grassroots movement, and and that's something that we've seen with the progressives in the Democratic Party, is that they don't depend on PAC money. They don't depend on the DNC giving them money because they know that they're not going to get it. So they go out door to door. They have volunteers who knock on these doors and say, look, this is what our candidate stands for. And so I think there's so much power in that. I know it's a lot of hard work, and it takes a lot of volunteers, and it takes a lot,
But you can't do that with COVID now. You knock on people's doors and they don't want to answer the door to people that are standing outside the door anymore.
Right.
I mean, literally, they've got people so afraid of this that all of the standard campaigning does not work anymore. You can't have fundraisers. I had a group here in Pinellas County, several bands that wanted to put a big concert on in the main park in downtown St. Pete and invite all the supporters there and have a big rally, but we weren't allowed to do that. If other people see that people support you, then they go, hey, those people are supporting that guy. Maybe I should support him too. What's he about? Why are all those people at that concert? Why are all those people supporting him? And it gets people interested in you. But the way we campaign now, everything's on Zoom meetings, and we have debates where there is no debate. You just ask half a dozen stupid questions over and over again. And so the whole political process has been shaped by COVID this last election. And we need to address those things as we move forward to 2024. How are we going to do things differently that does take into effect the new COVID landscape?
Well, I want to make sure throughout now and the time that you run again for Sheriff of Pinellas County, that you and I, I'm willing to have you on the show as often as you'd like to come on. I want to get your message out there to as many people. I know that between now and the next 4 years, my audience will continue to grow, and hopefully we'll be reaching, if not hundreds of thousands, hopefully millions of people, and especially in your area that listen to the show and watch the show and will hear what you have to say, because again, your message is so important that we just need to do everything we can to get it out to them in any way that we can. I don't care if people have to wear a mask and wear gloves, and if all your talking points are on a piece of paper and go, look, here's what James McLynas stands for, and we'd love for your vote for sheriff, and if you have any questions, please call us at this number or whatever. I don't care how it has to be done. We need to get your message out there, because that's the only way. There's only two ways of overcoming this corruption, and that is to get citizens like yourself who are willing to stand up against the system and be elected, and the other is for us to get out and vote for people like you. Those are the two things that we can do. Plus, we can volunteer for people like you and help in any way we can, and donate in any way that we can, in order to change the system, rather than just, going out and protesting day after day, which I'm not going to say it hasn't had any effect, but it seems like an awful lot of energy with very little efficiency as far as getting things accomplished. I think doing it this way accomplishes so much more, and it once it's achieved, things will just snowball from there. Like, the changes will happen almost immediately.
Well, an interesting thing about the protest is there obviously were protests down here in St. Pete. And, I have no problem. I've marched in protest for the last 8 years. When Sheriff Galtieri refused to arrest Michael Drejka for shooting the black man in the store over a handicapped parking spot, there were all kinds of protests here. I marched in those. I've marched with a lot of the groups here. I've been involved with a lot of the groups here over the last 10 years. And so I don't have a problem with that. So when all these protests came out, I'm thinking, great. I went down to the protests in downtown St. Pete, and I listened to them, and they were all there going, we need to defund the police and reallocate. We need to stop arresting. We need to get rid of the bad cops. We need to, and I'm listening. Yep, I got that in my platform. Yep, I got that in my platform. Right. I mean, literally every single thing that they were asking for was in my platform. So I got up there and spoke. I am James McLynas. I'm running for Sheriff of Pinellas County. I'm offering literally all of this on my platform. Go out and check it on McLynasforsheriff.com, and read everything that you're asking for. I offer, and if you want that, all you literally need to do is vote for me in November. Check out my platform, okay? So I get off, and then the person comes up, and the next person gets up there and says, like I said, we need to figure out a way to get all these things done. And it's like, hello? I mean, I literally just offered them every single thing that they were asking for, and they ignored me, because a lot of times these protesters are wanting literally their 15 minutes of fame. They want to be the one that's going to solve the problem. And so here they're down in downtown St. Pete, literally picketing and protesting in front of the St. Pete City Council building, or the St. Pete City Hall. Now, what's really interesting about that is the St. Pete City Hall is being renovated. It's completely empty. No one works there. All the furniture is gone. There's nobody in that building. And if that's not a great metaphor for how worthless a lot of this protesting is, they're sitting there yelling at an empty building, and nothing's going to happen. But they could have gotten behind me. They could have supported me. And they did a little bit towards the later end of it. The group's fragmented. But the point is that people don't even realize what they're being offered here. And that's my challenge. I need to teach every single person in Pinellas County what I offer. The way I do that is by money, funds, to donations. And when I had my platform, my website was seen in every single 50 states. It went to 610 different countries. I had donations coming from Australia and New Zealand and France and Spain, but I had to return all those because I'm not allowed to take donations from foreign entities. This year, we're going to have a PAC, the Independent Pinellas County, the Democratic Party of Pinellas County, and that's going to be able to take donations from any place. We'll take them from anywhere. So we're going to figure out how to beat this game by taking their own rule book, and these are some of the plans that we're making now.
Well, like I said, I want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of helping you to get your word out there in any way that we can, to get you donations, to get you volunteers, and whatever else you may need in order for you to win. Because it's important that we that we vote for citizens of this country who have, who do care about us and are willing to, to me, the sacrifices you're making to be able to to put yourself out there and go through all the garbage that you have to go through in order to make things right. It's admirable, and I just I respect the hell out of you for doing it, because very few people would have the courage to do what you're doing. So
Well, thank you, but I feel compelled to do it. My daughter is 17, and I don't want to leave Pinellas County, and I shouldn't have to leave Pinellas County.
right.
And why should my daughter have to live in a community that's this bad? Why not just try and do something about it, which is what I've been trying to do for the last 10 years.
All right. So what I want to do is I want to go over some of the problems, and I just want to touch on them briefly and go, okay, here's the problem. What's the solution? So the first problem is what we talked about earlier. Judges, prosecutors, and cops all have immunity. They have the qualified immunity. What is the solution to that? So that there are consequences to their actions. So that when the prosecutor withholds information that proves a person's innocence, and they know that they're supposed to turn that over and doesn't, what should be done about that? What should be done about the cop who falsifies his own report in order to, like what happened to you, saying, oh, well, I saw the water dripping off the woman's pants when she was wearing shorts. What should happen there when judges refuse to recuse themselves, like the judge in Sanford, who she refused to recuse herself even though her husband represented George Zimmerman earlier, and there was a conflict of interest in the Zimmerman Trayvon Martin case, and she refused to recuse herself. Should we get rid of immunity for these people?
Well, I think that there needs to be a qualified immunity when people deserve it, but not otherwise, no. The qualified immunity situation is a multifaceted response. You have to change the use of force parameters so that when they do something wrong, it's outside of that. If a deputy lies, he should be terminated, period. You lie in a report once, you're swearing under oath to criminalize somebody. And if you're willing to lie about that, you should never have a badge or a gun. I'm wanting to set up a website. It's on one of my platform positions where I'm going to set up a website where we rate all the police officers in Pinellas County, and I'd like to then extend that nationwide, basically on a Yelp system. So if you get pulled over and you don't like what the deputy did, and you thought he was rude and abusive to you, you can go out there and rate him from 0 to 5 stars. And if we start seeing that this deputy's got a 1.3 star rating with 37 reviews, then we know we've got a problem with that deputy. And that'll cause us as an agency to go and look at that deputy and figure out what the issue is and either retrain him or get rid of him. But he shouldn't be allowed to do that. Now we've got another officer that's getting 4.8 stars, 4.9 stars. You're going, hey, that's somebody that should be in a management position. That's somebody that should be in a position of training other officers, how he's getting those good reviews. And so we can change it that way. As far as like the judges, one of the problems with judges here is there really is no open election for judges. You get the ballot and basically it says, do you think he's doing a good job? Do you not think he's doing a good job? And that's all you get to pick. And if you haven't sat in front of that judge and listened to that judge do something wrong or violate somebody's due process rights or listen to the cop that's obviously lying, you don't know which judges are bad. So as a extension of that same website, I'd like to have judges' reviews as well. We can have them out there ranked and rated, and you can read what people's experiences was in front of that judge. And that way, when it comes time to vote for these people, they are singled out and shown to the community exactly who they are. As a sheriff, I would like to be able to go out and say, this judge is a good judge, that judge is not, this judge needs to be put out the pasture. And I want my position to be vocal in that respect too, because good other politicians, other people in chains of command authority, other people in the police industry, we should be able to point out judges that aren't doing their jobs without worrying about repercussions as well. So there's a number of different things that can be done to solve all these problems. But when you have a corrupt government, you have corrupt judges, a corrupt justice system, and most importantly, where it all begins, a corrupt police agency or industry, then that's never going to change. And you're never going to get these kinds of reforms that you need to fix this with chain of command inbreeding, voting for the sheriff that everybody else picks.
So what about the district attorney? Because obviously the sheriff and the district attorney work hand in hand. The district attorney refuses to pick up any of your cases because they have a vendetta against you. What about district attorneys and how they should be held accountable?
Well, I have a very simple way of dealing with a district attorney. People say the district attorney makes all the decisions of who they arrest and who they charge and who they don't charge. Yeah, that's correct. But what people fail to realize is these people don't even get to the district attorney unless I put handcuffs on them. So he doesn't get to see he doesn't get the cases I pick. I get to pick the cases he gets to pick. And that's the way it works. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clean up the court systems by not arresting people for petty minor offenses. No victim, no crime. I'm not going to be arresting people for cannabis, obviously. I'm not going to be arresting people for personal use and paraphernalia. Instead, we'll offer those people drug treatment. So I'm intending on eliminating at least maybe 45, 50, 60% of the arrests that we currently are sending through the court system, which should clean up a lot of the nonsense and streamline the system a little bit better. Then we're going to focus on the issue where we have judges that, we have people that have been arrested like 37 times for grand theft auto. Okay, but they're still on the streets. We have an issue where these judges are basically being stricter on people that they don't need to be and being lighter on people that they should be stricter on. And I want to change that. So I want to be able to go in there and say, this judge is not doing the right thing here. This judge is not doing the right thing there. And I'll be in the news. We had this case here. That judge let this guy go. We had this case there. That guy let that guy go. And I want to go ahead and put pressure on them by opening my mouth, which currently no police officer does. So a good constitutional sheriff that is actually working for the people, that the people elected to come in and do that job, can literally help clean up all of this if it's the right guy.
Okay. Second problem, the system is set up to reward winners. One of the things I talked about with my friend in Finland and their system there is that there is no reward for winners. So it like a district attorney who wins so many cases doesn't get rewarded by being promoted or being able to use that in some sort of campaign if they want to be elected to a certain position. They don't in Finland. That's not it. That would be frowned upon. They like no one would even think about doing it because everyone would think that person was shady. Here, obviously, the prosecuting attorneys love to show how tough they are on crime and how they convicted X amount of criminals and what their win percentage is to show that that they're protecting the citizens of their community. And the cops are the same way. The judges are the same way. That it's a setup system for winners in rewarding those winners. What do you think about changing that system to where you're not rewarded based off of your win-loss record?
Well, I think that is something that would be very complicated to do because that's basically how they measure everything these days. And that's how these people wind up, especially state attorneys, wind up getting reelected. I've done this, I've done that, a couple of big name brand cases, and they get their name in the paper, then people keep voting them. Here in Pinellas County, Bernie McCabe's just been there for so long, people just assume he must be doing a good job because no one's complaining about him. But the people that should be complaining about him are not. I think that basically what I'd like to see is more along the lines of how many of these convictions are overturned? How many of these convictions, how many officers do we get that arrest people? And how many of those arrests actually turn into an actually legitimate conviction? Are they arresting, are 80% of the people that they're arresting not getting convicted? Then that's showing me not so much that the judge is doing something wrong, but maybe that the officer is arresting too many people. But if we, in my opinion, if we streamline the process, put less people into the system, then I think that the flaws will become a lot more evident and the bad characters, the bad judges, the bad state attorneys will tend to float to the top. But it's a complicated system and there really is no one simple answer.
I think, you make a good point though. When you say you want to streamline things, obviously you understand that once you start streamlining, money starts going away. There's not as much money. When you don't have as many people in the system, you're taking away money. When you don't, if you quit arresting people on cannabis possessions and things of that nature, now these are people who are not going to be in the system. They don't have to go through courses or classes or whatever. And that's all revenue that these communities, or I should say these police departments depend on. And you're going to be taking food out of their mouths as far as they're concerned. And does that bother you?
No, not at all. In fact, that's one of my main goals is to take that food out of their mouths. And what I mean by that is Sheriff Galtieri has been in office since 2011. Since he's been in office, his budget over that period of time was $2.3 billion. And that doesn't include the $600 million that they spent on capital improvements for the 2 new jail centers, the new sheriff's office, the new North Station, all the equipment and all the crap and all the fixing and the maintenance and the court systems that they've had to keep up with all the people that they keep criminalizing. So you say, well, they're going to run out of this money. We're going to have less money. And I say, great, because that means that the court will be smaller. The number of police that we need. If Sheriff Galtieri actually said one day that cannabis enforcement represented, and I'm going to quote him, 30% of his business. Okay, he literally said that in a press conference. I heard him say that personally. I was there. And if you have cannabis enforcement being 30% of his business, and I stop and end all cannabis enforcement, well, guess what? We don't need 30% of our officers. We don't need 30% of those patrol cars. We don't need 30% of the uniforms, the benefits, and the pensions. We don't need 30% of the people at the jail. We don't need 30% of the people at the courthouses. We can literally eliminate that entire segment of prosecution and literally save ourselves hundreds of millions of dollars here in Pinellas County by stop arresting these people that should have never been arrested in the first place.
Well, this is where I think that you're going to run into issues, because now they're going to say, oh, well, because we don't have the funds for this 30% that you're talking about, they're going to sit there and go, well, now crime's going to run rampant, blah, 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 because it's all about fear, and because they don't want to downsize. They don't want to lose jobs. They want to become bigger and more powerful than they already are. And so that's why it's like this monster that keeps growing, and they keep needing more and more in order to keep growing, and there's no end in sight. And so when you're coming along, you're going, yeah, we're not going to do that anymore. We're actually going to feed it less, and we're going to downsize this monster where it's not a monster any longer. And of course, you're going to have, these scare tactics that are used on the public, there's propaganda out there against you, saying that the things that you want to implement are going to make crime rise again and all this other nonsense. And so,
well, that's all a fallacy. And then there is scare tactics and they use these scare tactics to try and squeeze money out of the people of Pinellas County. Like when those 3 girls were killed by the Pinellas County Sheriff's Department, Galtieri went on this 1-year campaign talking about the stolen car epidemic here in Pinellas County and how it's out of control, and this is going on, that's going on, and he's trying to scare the people, while at the same time he literally said it's because of the black youth in South St. Pete. So he literally gave a press conference saying that all the problems that we have are because of those black people that live over there. Literally, he said that and I have the video. It's on my Pinellas County Sheriff's Greatest Hits on YouTube. You can go out there and watch him saying this crap. And so that part of the scare technique is there. But then if you actually look at the statistics, the amount of cars that are stolen here in Pinellas County has gone down consistently over the last 8 or 10 years, just like all crime across the board has gone down. Whether they have more police officers or not, it is not something. Basically, Americans are better behaved now than they've ever been, but arrests are through the ceiling. And people being killed by police are through the ceiling. The number of police are through the ceiling, and they're not responsible for this. Every single study that's been done has shown that the decrease in crime really has little to nothing to do with the actions taken by the police industry, but they're going to keep taking credit for this when they really shouldn't. So the bottom line here is, in Pinellas County, about 80% of the crimes that are reported to Sheriff Galtieri go unsolved, because he's not investigating murders and rapes and burglaries and robberies. Those are victim crimes where there's an actual victim who's been victimized by a criminal. Now, as sheriff, I'm going to be focusing all of my energy on that. I'm going to be solving those 80% of the crimes that he doesn't solve. I'm going to be going after the people that are actually victimizing the people here in Pinellas County, and that's where we're going to focus all of our energy and focus all of our money. So even though I'm spending $100 million a year less not arresting people for smoking cannabis, at the same time, I'm going to be focusing all of our energy on arresting the actual real criminals here in Pinellas County. So we will spend less money and even be safer than we are before.
Sounds great to me. So,
another aspect of this is if I end cannabis enforcement here in Pinellas County, literally, I think that I could double tourism in 2021, literally. So I think that I can solve our economy, cure our economy by 2021 if I was elected. And we would have had a booming economy. The governments would have made more in their bed taxes, in their sales taxes. We have a penny for Pinellas that goes to infrastructure here that's on top of every sales tax that we have. We would get more money by not arresting these people and having a cannabis-friendly community into everybody's pockets. That all the hotels would be filled, the businesses would be filled, people would have jobs, people could pay their rents. The government would collect their taxes on all of this as it funneled back and forth. So actually, we would have a better system here, a better government, a better, stronger economy by not arresting these people. And I can't see a single thing that's wrong with that.
I agree. And one of the things I think that's important is like, I think that you could be the catalyst. Like once you're elected, I think there could be a movement where we have more people like you throughout the, not just the state but throughout the country, where they start running, and where we start getting the message out there that, see, things can change. It only takes the first one to show, because everybody goes, oh, you can't fight the system. But when you do and you fight it and you win, all of a sudden people's mindsets begin to change. Go, oh, maybe we can win this. We just saw that it just happened. And you could be the start of a domino effect where, this could catch on throughout the country. And that's what I want to see. That's, that, we got to get you in there, get that first one done to show people that not only is it possible, but it's worth fighting for, that, because it makes real change, it makes a real difference. And that's what I believe you would do. I truly believe you'd make a huge difference.
Well, that's actually the way that I've structured all of this, because I hope that happens. I'm trying to teach other people to do what I do, which is why I literally spent 6 months creating my website with my platform positions on there, so that people could actually look at what I'm going to do, see exactly how I'm going to do it, why I'm going to do it, and exactly how I'm going to do it. And I'm hoping that other candidates across the country will literally go to my website and copy it. Take my platform, modify a little bit to your own needs or whatever, but you can copy my platform right now and run in your area. And you don't need me to tell you how to do it, because it's right there already. You can offer the same things I'm offering here to the people in your community and start running now. You don't have to wait till I win. Everybody can start doing this right now. And I'm hoping that this will be something that resonates across the whole country. And based on the response that I get from people all across the country, I've gotten donations from everywhere, because what I'm teaching, what I'm showing can be done is something that really resonates with the people, because we know that the last 100 years of policing has not worked. It's gotten us to the point where cities are burning because people are fed up with the police industry. And the police industry isn't offering anything, little token measures here and there. Nothing is getting done. But if people realize that this can be done by you, by me, by someone who just steps up and decides to run for this, we can literally solve the police industry problem within the next 10 years just by bringing people like myself into power at police stations and at sheriff's offices all across the country.
And that's the way it's going to have to be done, is through people like you, because we can't depend on our political leaders to do anything, because they're all cowards. It doesn't matter Biden's in office. It doesn't matter if Trump is in office. It doesn't, because they're not going to do anything, because they're not going to stand up against the police unions and the power that they wield, as far as, getting people to, whether or not they'll get their support and make
And
them
let
look
me
like
tell
they're
you
weak on
exactly
crime.
why. And let me tell you exactly why. When you become a police officer or you're elected as sheriff here in Florida, and I'm pretty sure it's the same all across the country, you sign an oath of office. And here in Florida, you say that I swear and affirm that I will protect and defend the Constitution of the United States and the government of the United States and the state of Florida. You don't say anything about, I'm here to protect the people. I'm going to do good for the people that elected me. I'm going to protect constituents from constitutional violations. Literally, you're swearing to be the bodyguard of the government. You're literally swearing to protect the government, not the people, not the country, not the people, not anything except the government. So when you say you're going to go to this government agency and report it to them or report it to them, why is any of these politicians or any of these government entities going to literally attack their own bodyguards? Because literally that's all they are. They're revenue generators and bodyguards for the government, and that's what's wrong with our system. We need to have an oath of office that swears an allegiance to the people, not the government.
Agreed. And that needs to be changed. I think I was going to ask you, since you can't get the district attorney or state attorney to do anything, have you ever thought about going to an agency like the FBI and going, look, there's corruption that runs amok in Pinellas County, and I have evidence upon evidence upon evidence to prove all of this. Have you ever?
Sure. I've gone to the FBI, I've gone to the FDLE, I've presented them evidence, I've done everything. What you're failing to recognize is they're badge wearers too. Right. They're part of the brotherhood. They're part of the thin blue line. They're part of the same government that these people are the bodyguards of. And again, that's the whole problem. We've gotten to a situation here in America where government has gotten so big that the government and the people that work in the government think that we are here to serve them rather than the other way around. And that's what they think, and that's the way they act, and that's how they pass all these laws, and that's why they criminalize us and they threaten us with these people with badges to keep us in line, to keep us shut up, to not say anything, to do what you're told. Don't ever question a police officer. Do everything he told you to. Otherwise, you could get shot. You know, basically, we have this situation in play, and we, the people, have to take that back over.
You know, I was going to tell you another statistic here too, because you brought up cannabis and not going after those people. Nearly 700,000 people are in jail on any given day. 700,000 people for just simple possession of pot.
That's insane.
700,000 a day. That's ridiculous. And all it is like you said, it generates revenue, it generates income, because it puts them in the system. You know, and it's not just absurd, it's obscene. It's obscene. It's just, you know, it should be unlawful to do that.
Well, I have a graph on my website on my Ending Cannabis Enforcement page, and the graph shows that the average number of population that is addicted to drugs has hovered right around 9.5 to 10 to 11%. It doesn't matter if you're Black or you're Hispanic or you're Asian. It's a little bit higher, a little bit lower between the different segments of the population. But across the board, on average, it's about 10%. And if you go back and you look at addicted persons from like the 40s all the way through today, that 10% line is flat all the way across the entire spectrum. Then you go and you look at the amount of money that we've spent on the war on drugs, and you see it just in the 70s and 80s, it just starts skyrocketing. And we've spent over $1.4 trillion on the war on drugs, but that level of addicted people have literally stayed exactly the same no matter how much we spend and how much we throw at it. So we have to learn to be smarter. It doesn't work. Handcuffs don't cure addiction, never will. And pot people aren't typically the addicted people that we're trying to focus on. You see all these people getting arrested. They're the low-hanging fruit. The police industry is picking on them. But how often do you hear about a great big arrest for a dealer in these communities? You hardly ever see any of that. I haven't seen one here in Pinellas County in years. 10 years I've been following this stuff. But I see them arresting the users. Somebody's got to be selling it to them, but they're not taking any action against these people because that actually takes work. So they just pick the low-hanging fruit, they process them for the money they can get out of them, and that's the end of the day. And we've got to stop that. We've got to stop looking at people that smoke cannabis as bad people. We've got to stop looking at people that commit victimless crimes as criminals.
Okay, let's talk about another problem that they have: professional courtesy, which is letting each other off. Cops letting cops off, prosecuting attorneys not prosecuting cops, judges who are way too fucking lenient on cops, and when they commit crimes, even crimes against children, and they get a slap on the wrist where other people would be sent away to prison for years, and the cop will get a slap on the wrist and maybe probation at best. You know, this professional courtesy, I feel like, is a big problem of it as well, and it's got to stop.
Yeah, over the last 3 years, we're down here in Florida. You know, it gets pretty hot around here, and it's not uncommon for people to have a situation where they forget their kids in the back seat and they leave them there and they wind up dying in the car because of the heat. And in every single case where that's happened, they've arrested the parent here in Florida. And then 4 years ago, there was a deputy or an officer that did that. He left his child in the car, and the car was the child died in the car. But he just made a terrible mistake. Yeah. He was not arrested. And, you know, the bottom line is the law should apply to them more than it should apply to us. The standard should be higher for them, not lower for them.
Exactly.
And the way that you change that is you bring somebody in that's not indoctrinated into that thin blue line. And you're not going to find that within the police industry, which is why it's critical that if you want these things changed, you have to look at the concept of electing someone who is not a police officer to run these agencies.
Okay, what about the culture that they create of them against us? Because you know, when you become sheriff, you're going to have to deal with that. You're going to have to deal that cultivation of that whole them against us mentality that's been there forever and ever.
Well, part of that is the bad training that they've gotten over the years. There's a guy out there that does a warrior cop and bulletproof warrior training. And I can't remember his name right now, but the guy actually said in his class to some police officers, and this is recorded, he said, "The day you kill somebody, you'll have the best sex of your life."
Wow.
Now, I have records where 114 Pinellas County deputies were paid by tax dollars to take that training. And what they teach you in that training is everybody's out to kill you. if you're a cop. Everyone's going to pull a gun for no reason and shoot you. There's a war on you. Everybody hates you. Everybody picks on you. You're a victim of everything, and you better watch out because you're going to get murdered and you need to go home, which is, again, why they're pulling out guns and they're shooting everybody for everything. And that mindset is ingrained into them. They actually have targets where they practice shooting at children with guns, at pregnant women with guns, at elderly people with guns, and it's supposed to desensitize them. Some of these cops have actually bragged about how they put up pictures of their own children for target practice, so it would desensitize them to pull those triggers. And it's this delusional mentality that everybody's out to kill you that causes them to get that us against them mentality. You then add to that the militarization. If you're in this military mindset and you're trained to be a hammer, everything else looks like a nail. And so when you dress these guys up with all this military gear and those stupid vests with 50 different things on them, you're basically putting them into this mindset that they're at war. And guess who the opposing party is? You and I. And so that training needs to go away. They have training models in Europe where the police are trained that you're here to protect society. You're here to help them. You're here to assist. When was the last time you saw a police officer stop for somebody broken down at the side of the road to actually help them? When was the last time you saw a police officer changing a tire? They do these photo ops where they give bicycles to the kids, and there's 50,000 pictures of them giving the bicycles to the kids. If you have to do a Photoshop or photo op to make yourself look good, then that changes the whole meaning of the gesture. If you're going to give something to somebody or help somebody, just help them. Don't wait till the cameras get there and do that.
Right.
So it's a matter of just training these people to think differently. You're not at war with these people. You're here to help these people. And that's something that's going to take a little bit of time. And that's not even going to start happening until you bring people like myself into power.
Okay, so that was going to be my next point was the militarization of the different police forces throughout the country. Would you, as sheriff, get rid of all the military weapons, vehicles that they now have at their access? Would you get rid of those?
Oh yeah, we're gonna have a garage sale on the lawn of the Pinellas County Sheriff's Department. eBay, baby.
That would be.
Come get your MRAP today only.
Exactly.
Yeah, we're going to get rid of that stuff because there's really no legitimate reason to have it. They say that, well, we'll need these MRAPs in case there's like hurricanes and flooding. You know what works really good for evacuating people in a hurricane and flooding? A school bus.
Oh.
They're really high.
Yeah.
They can go in place with water. They can load a whole bunch of people in suitcases and everything. You try and get a bunch of people through that manhole cover on that MRAP, it ain't going to happen, right?
Right.
So the bottom line here is all that stuff needs to go. But not only does that need to go, as sheriff, one of my positions is I'm going to end the military mindset within the Pinellas County Sheriff's Department too, by ending the process of using stripes and bars and sergeants and lieutenants and captains and majors. All that needs to go because that reinforces the mindset of we're at war against our own people. Instead of that, I want to eliminate all that. I want to have police supervisors, a sheriff's manager, a group unit leader. We don't need to be talking about them in military terms anymore because they're not at war. And that needs to stop by just having what they're called, the uniforms that they wear, the stripes on their sleeves. All that needs to end. And I would be ending the entire military mindset of the Pinellas County Sheriff's Department as sheriff.
Excellent. All right. So let's go to the tactics that we talk about that police officers use, detectives use when questioning people. The coercion and the mind games that they play. The fact that they can lie when they're interrogating people to get them to confess to something because they think that that they'll make the person think that, well, they're police officers, they don't lie, they must be telling the truth. So would you get rid of these tactics, these psychological tactics, these coercive tactics, these tactics where they're allowed to lie to people?
I think that if you follow the strict interpretation of the United States Constitution, a lot of those things that they do would be unconstitutional. And as sheriff of Pinellas County, I'm going to basically look at every single thing we do under that microscope. Is it a violation of the Constitution? If it is, it will never be done. If it's not a violation of the Constitution, then we have to look at whether or not it's something that we want to be associated with, what we want to be a part of. Now, if you've got somebody that's murdered 3 or 4 kids over the last 6 years and we've got evidence that's tying to them, I will use every trick in the book to convict that person because that person's a real danger to society. But on the other hand, We use these tactics for every little teeny thing that happens in society, and I think that that's wrong. I think that type of interrogation should be only used in extraordinary circumstances, not as a routine method of catching everybody for anything. Because you can actually get people to say things that criminalize themselves when they don't even realize it. Going back to that guy with the 17-year-old with his hemp that he bought for $5 a gram. That officer convinced him and lied to him that what he had was marijuana instead of hemp. He's from California. He doesn't know what that's not true. So after he told him that, then the kid's going, well, yeah, I guess I've got marijuana. You told me I've got marijuana. So he's admitting on that because the deputy lied to him. And we shouldn't be using deception to criminalize people when in reality, if they had told the truth, if they had handled the situation under the Constitution, if they had been honest and upright and forthright in how they deal with the citizens, then the citizens, in my opinion, would be more willing to be forthright and upright and open with us in a better way. I don't think we have to lie to people and con them and convince them to incriminate themselves when they otherwise would have.
You know, Chris Rock had a comedy bit that he did years ago, and he was talking about how you get pulled over by the cops and they start telling you did this and you did that, and you go, hell, maybe I did. You start doubting yourself because you go, no, I didn't do that, and they'll say, well, this happened, and you go, oh, shit, maybe I did do it. I didn't even realize it. And because that kind of badgering, that kind of lying, that kind of coerciveness to get people to admit to something they didn't do, that they found that people who were on death row who were exonerated, 25% of those people had filed a false statement claiming that they had committed the crime because they were forced into it because of things like sleep deprivation, keeping them from eating and things of that nature, and just saying, whatever tactics they use. Like your buddy over there said that he saw you do it, and at some point, especially when you're sleep deprived, you start going, I'll say whatever the hell I need to say to get out of here because I can't take it any longer. And so that's what they do. They just keep at you until you're willing to sign a paper saying that you did something. And then of course you're screwed at that point. And that,
well, one of the things I definitely am against is, and I've seen this on literally hundreds of interrogations that I've watched, where they tell the person, I'm sure you want to go home tonight, let's just get it over with. And they're literally lying to them that if they just say X, Y, or Z, you get to go home today. So the people go, oh, I just have to say that to go home. Sure, I'll say that. Just get me the hell out of here.
Right.
And they wind up doing that because they're being promised something that the deputy is or the officer is not allowed to give them. And I don't think that they should be ever able to make false promises about what will or will not happen based on something that they say. That's something that should never take place.
Okay, and so the last thing I want to address as far as the problems go, which you've already pretty much addressed, are the police unions that are too powerful. That you're saying you will not sign that contract if there's something in there that you don't agree with, protecting bad police officers and allowing them to decide who the mediators are going to be or things of that nature. Is that correct?
Yeah, here in Florida, the law actually allows what's known as collective bargaining, meaning a group of any company or any profession has the right to get together and bargain collectively as a whole with a company or a major organization. And I don't have a problem with that. If they want to sit there and talk to me about COLA expenses and what's covered under healthcare and that type of a thing, or whether they want 12-hour shifts versus 8-hour shifts, that kind of stuff, I don't have a problem with that. That's not something that bothers me. What bothers me is when they start telling me what I can and cannot do, how they're going to be interfering in the administration process of investigating and dealing with officers that have done something wrong. I don't think the union belongs in there. If the union wants to hire them a lawyer out of their funds that they paid into the union, I don't have a problem with that. But don't dare come tell me that I have to do this or I can't do that in order to hold a deputy accountable. And if there's anything in any contract that any union presents to me as sheriff that has that in it, I will not sign it.
Excellent. Okay, so kind of wrapping things up a little bit. I think it's important that people understand that we need people like you who are willing to hold police officers accountable for their actions and their behavior and call out when police officers do things that are illegal or bad or against the community, and be willing to fire those officers, be willing to get rid of them and to make your police department one that serves the people and not themselves. The other thing is that I think the one main piece of advice that you've given for everyone out there is to not waive your Miranda rights, to not talk to the police, especially and teach your children that. Would that be correct?
Yeah, that would be correct, because if you speak to any officer's children, the police industry, the police officers, the sheriff's deputies, they teach their children, do not talk to the police, do not answer any questions, do not say anything to them. They teach their children not to do any field sobriety tests at all, not to do it until they contact you. Have them say, I want to speak to my dad, or I want a lawyer. And if those are the people that are within the system and they know how the system works, and they're telling their own children not to answer these questions or take these tests, then that's what all of us should be doing, because they know what happens on the inside and they're trying to protect their children. So why can't we give our children the same advice that cops give their children?
So people, all right, so let me ask you this. What's the name of your website?
It's I have McLynas4sheriff.com, and it's McLynas sheriff.com. And there's several pages out there, there's platform positions out there. Anything that you want to know about what we've talked about is on there.
Okay. And
there's also a place on there where people can donate if they want to help support this type of a movement here, not just in Pinellas County, but in America. Because like you say, if I can win this here, then it'll spread across the rest of the country.
Right. And so, and that's the thing that people need to understand is like you can get outraged all you want. You can watch YouTube channels and watch, video after video. You can go on Facebook. You can get outraged with all the things that are going on. If you don't do something about it besides just watch, and you just become outraged, that doesn't solve the problem. That doesn't help. It just means that, yeah, you're upset about it, but you're not upset enough to do something about it. And if you're not upset enough to do something about it, there's never going to be any change. So I implore people that if you're tired of the way the system is working or not working for us, and you have someone like James here who's willing to change all of that, then do something about it. Whether it's volunteer your time, volunteer, to donate money, whatever you can do. We need to support, get the word out, and to vote, because if you don't vote, it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. I always know that people out there sitting there go, oh, your vote doesn't matter. The hell it doesn't. It does when you come together as a people and you have a cause and you want to fight for it. It will matter greatly. And as you said, even with what you've gone through, the number of votes you got and with $1,600 is amazing. So it just shows that when people come together, there's things that we can do that will change our community and then change the world.
So one of the things I wanted to point out, and what we're talking about earlier about taking over the Democratic Party with the independent Democratic Party of Pinellas County, a lot of people are frustrated. A lot of people saw in this primary that their vote, their opinion didn't matter because they were blocked from voting. And what I'm trying to teach the voters of Pinellas County, and hopefully the voters across the country, is that you have to be smart about how you cast your vote, where you place your vote. You have to not remove yourself from the table by signing up. I'm mad at the Republicans and the Democrats, so I'm going to sign up as an independent. You just took yourself away from the table and allowed somebody else to pick who you get to vote for. So what I'm going to try and teach people is not only if you feel like your vote doesn't count, let me show you how your vote can count. This is, if you take this step here, do this, and then that, your vote will count. If you don't care if your vote counts, then just stay the way you are and get locked out of everything that you're being asked to vote on, because you're not going to get the chance to vote on who you get to vote for in the first place.
Great point. And like I said, I'm going to bring that up in a couple of weeks when we do this, because I honestly, I know that the Democratic Party has changed, over the decades when Dixiecrats used to run the Democratic Party, and then you had the Democrats who were more not progressive. That's not the word I'm looking for. Liberal, and the Dixiecrats left and went to the Republican Party because that's who they truly identified with, as the Republican Party. And I see centrist Democrats being very much. That's why when they had the DNC just had the convention, they were giving AOC like 90 seconds to speak, and yet they invited all these Republicans to speak at the Democratic convention. I'm going, what does that tell you when they're inviting Republicans to come here? because they're more aligned with the Republicans than they are with the Democratic Party. And so, to me, I'm thinking, okay, there's just no changing that. But after listening to you, I think that you might be onto something here, and I think that
Yeah, don't reject. Basically, you have two parties that are going to win anything, and don't reject both of them because you don't like what this one stands for or what that one stands for. There are enough people out here now that don't like what the Democratic Party stands for and don't like what the Republican Party stands for. And what I'm advocating is that we all come in and take over one of the parties so it does represent what we want as the majority of the people here in Pinellas County. It does give us the choice to impact how things are done here in the community. Because instead of being independent, you just put yourself off at the sidelines. You're on the bench for this game. You don't even get to play. So I'm saying let's all come off the bench at the same time. Let's join the game at the same time, and let's dictate how the game is played. Let's not be losers here. Let's take it over and be the winners.
Well, I like that. I truly like that thought, and I'm going to certainly bring that up to the table. And I think there's a lot to be discussed about that because I think you're on to something. So excellent.
Awesome.
James, thank you so much for spending time with us today. And I wish you the best. I want to help you out in any way I can. So please reach out to me if you need anything, and I'll do everything I can to help you, to get your name out there, to get you out in front of people, so they know what you stand for, and so that we can start changing the system one by one. And I think that again, everything you're doing is very admirable, and I respect the hell out of you, and I want to help support you in any way I can. Okay.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate that, Kurt.
All right. Well, folks, that's going to do it for today. Thank you for joining us. And until next time, take care.